Chapter 337. Under the watchful eyes of the Allied forces, Bai Qi played a beautiful empty fort strategy. As early as when the defense of the three districts was deployed, the 2nd Division had quietly hidden in the Royal City military camp. As for the patrolling soldiers at the top of the city walls, they were merely a group of reserve members wearing the standard equipment of the cavalry. The only soldiers of the 2nd Division were the cavalry battalion that had been stationed on one side of the bridge. Bai Qi's intention was to treat the 2nd Division as a cavalry unit. Just as Zhao Sihu had feared, if the 3 divisions were to be stationed in the 3 inner cities, they would definitely be surrounded by the enemy and have to fight on their own. The course of the war was as such. As long as the Allied forces occupied the 3 bridges that connected the 3 cities, it would be equivalent to cutting off the communication between the 3 cities. Therefore, Bai Qi secretly hid the 2nd Division in King City. In order to confuse the enemy, Bai Qi specially ordered his men to hang the 2 Indi divisions' military flags all over Qiushui City. The battle for the bridge seemed to confirm that the 2nd Division was indeed stationed in Qiushui City. Because of their respective goals, both Dai Qin and Lord Chunshin unconsciously neglected Qiushui City. For Bai Qi, how he would mobilize the 2nd Division would depend on the enemy's arrangements. If the Allied forces had mobilized their army early on and concentrated their forces on Shanghai City, then the 2nd Division would be a surprise force that would participate in the defense and surprise attack. If the enemy was unable to take down Shanghai City immediately, Bai Qi would use the heaven and earth great shift. As a result, the grassland Allied forces suffered heavy losses under the repeated attacks of Shanghai City, and they began to think of retreating. Even though the reinforcements had arrived, they did not attack Shanghai City. For Bai Qi, this was the best-case scenario. The only variable was the predicament that the 3rd Division was facing. Fortunately, at the critical moment, the Military Intelligence Department performed a miraculous feat and helped the 3rd Division successfully escape. After receiving the information from the military intelligence, Bai Qi decisively carried out the next step of his plan. This was the biggest gift that Bai Qi had prepared for the Allied forces. The 13th of February became the turning point of the Battle of Lian Province. On this day, the 3rd Division successfully retreated to Gushin County and escaped the fate of being attacked from both sides. On this day, the Emperor Dust Division and the Battle Wolf Division met at the camp in the east of the city and decided to send their troops to Gushin County. On this day, Lord Chunshin was trying to persuade Dai Qin to attack Shanghai City together. The most important thing was, on this day, the 2nd Division suddenly teleported from Shanghai City to Mulan City. After confirming that Shanghai City was temporarily safe, Bai Qi decisively activated his 2 trump cards, the 2nd Division and the 4th Division. His target was Borodicchi's division, which was responsible for monitoring Mulan City. Borodicchi's troops only had 8,000 cavalrymen, while Mulan City had gathered 2 great divisions. Among them, the 2nd Division was the trump card of Shanghai City's army. Together with the newly formed City Guard Brigade of Mulan City, their total military strength was close to 30,000 soldiers. Before the departure of the 2nd Division, Bai Qi had only given Luo Shixin 3 words, and the battle quickly. Time was of the essence to Shanghai City. The empty fort strategy could only confuse them for a while. If it dragged on for a long time, they would definitely be exposed. Luo Shixin immediately made a military pledge, swearing that he would annihilate Borodicchi's troops within 1 day. In order to completely annihilate Borodicchi's troops, after Luo Shixin teleported to Mulan City, he discussed with Mu Ging and decided to outflank Borodicchi's troops. Mu Ging led the 4th Division and the City Guard Brigade to attack from the front, attracting the attention of Borodicchi's troops. The 2nd Division quietly left the city through the west gate and took a detour to the rear of Borodicchi's troops, cutting off their retreat and preventing them from escaping to the Great Prairie. For the past few days, Mulan City had been quiet. As the commanding general, Borodicchi naturally wouldn't relax. However, the soldiers below him were complaining. The soldiers were already dissatisfied with the task of monitoring Mulan City. In their minds, Going to Shanghai City and plundering the endless wealth of Shanghai City was the most glorious thing. However, they didn't know that not only did their companions not get a single copper coin from Shanghai City, but more than 20,000 of their brothers had also died on the battlefield. This was why the world was so strange. When you were envious of others, others were also envious of you. Didn't the Allied forces that attacked Shanghai City envy Bori Tichy's troops for their easy task? Therefore, when the southern gate of Milan City suddenly opened, and the formidable army surged out of the city like a black tide and approached the campsite of Bori Tichy's army, it was easy to imagine the impact on the cavalrymen of the Great Prairie. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! Quick, prepare for battle. Cavalry camp, gather. I'm talking to you, little bastard. Prepare the horses. Prepare the horses. All kinds of voices filled the camp. It was a mess. When Bori Tichy received the news, he walked out his tent and went to the high platform. The 4th Division was a mixed division of light infantry and cavalry. It mainly consisted of infantrymen, with only one light cavalry brigade guarding the left flank of the army. On the right flank was the City Guard Brigade. The center of the army was the largest. The saber and shield soldiers, spear soldiers, and archers lined up in a strict formation. The vast army marched in an orderly manner towards the camp step by step with a shocking momentum. Bori Tichy's eyes focused. He knew that the enemy was going to use their full strength. He was a hot-blooded person. After holding back for a few days, he was already exhausted. Seeing the army of Milan City take the initiative to leave the city, he couldn't help but feel his blood boil. Although the number of the Milan City's army exceeded his expectations, which was twice the number of the cavalrymen of the Great Prairie, Bori Tichy wasn't afraid to fight. He believed that his invincible armored cavalry could crush the enemy's formation. The cavalrymen of the Great Prairie were indeed well-trained. In a short period of time, they finished gathering. Bori Tichy rode on his cyan beetle horse and walked in front of the army. He waved his hand and shouted, "Attack! Bohegaha!" The majestic cavalrymen fearlessly charged towards the enemy. Before the cavalrymen arrived, the archers of the 4th Division had already given them a show of strength. After the 4th Division changed their equipment, the bows and crossbows they were equipped with were all of the best quality produced by the bow and crossbow department. No matter in range or accuracy, these bows and crossbows were much better than ordinary bows and crossbows. The rain of arrows that filled the sky weaved into a huge net and covered the heads of the cavalrymen of the Great Prairie. The cavalrymen of the Great Prairie misjudged the range of the arrows and suffered a great loss. For a moment, men and horses were thrown off their feet. The vanguard of the Great Prairie cavalrymen was cut down by the rain of arrows like harvesting wheat. The powerful rain of arrows made the hearts of the cavalrymen of the Great Prairie feel cold. They had never encountered such powerful bows and crossbows. In comparison, the bows and arrows in their hands were like toys. Bori Tichy's expression was also solemn. He no longer had the confidence he had at the beginning. Bori Tichy was a person who easily became hot-headed. The smell of blood that pervaded the battlefield had completely stimulated Bori Tichy's bloodthirsty nature. He decided to disregard everything and not fear the sacrifice. He ordered the army to continue the charge. The short 500 meters had completely turned into a slaughterhouse. Finally, after paying a huge sacrifice, the Great Prairie cavalrymen and the sword and shield troops of the 4th Division collided. The high-speed charging cavalrymen dealt a devastating blow to the sword and shield troops and the spear troops. The sword and shield troops of the 4th Division were not the heavy infantry of the mountain barbarians. They could not directly resist the charge of any cavalry. The center of the army was about to be pierced through by the Great Prairie cavalrymen. At the crucial moment, the light cavalry brigade and the City Guard Brigade on the two flanks cut in at the right time, suppressing the Great Prairie army from the flanks. With the restraint of the light cavalry, the attack of the Great Prairie cavalrymen was affected and their rhythm was disrupted. Seizing this opportunity, the center of the army, under the personal command of Muging, quickly reorganized the defensive line and re-established it, avoiding the fate of being pierced through by the Great Prairie army. As expected, the Great Prairie Cavalrymen could not be underestimated. Under the circumstances where they were outnumbered and outfitted, they could still beat the 4th Division into a sorry state. They truly lived up to their name of Great Prairie Cavalrymen. Just when the battle was at a stalemate, rumbling noises came from the rear of the battlefield. The deafening noises were even more imposing than the charging of the Great Prairie Cavalrymen. Startled, Bori Taichi turned his head to look, and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. At the rear of the Great Prairie Army, a huge cavalry was charging at high speed. The cavalrymen at the very front were clad in shining armor, which reflected a dazzling golden light under the sunlight. The 2nd Division arrived at the battlefield at the most crucial moment. "My life is over," Bori Taichi lamented. Before the Great Prairie Cavalrymen could react, the 2nd Division had already rushed to the front. Working with the 4th Division, they completely surrounded the Great Prairie Army. What followed was a massacre. 2 hours later, the remaining Great Prairie Cavalrymen finally could not hold on any longer and took the initiative to surrender. In this battle, except for the 3,000 cavalrymen who surrendered, the rest were all killed. Bori Taichi, the commander of the Great Prairie Cavalrymen and one of the 3 great generals of the Tianjin tribe, died in battle. The blazing sun hung high in the sky, shining on the land and revealing a bright red color. The destruction of Bori Taichi's tribe was the turning point of the Great Prairie tribe's decline. It marked the end of the era when the Great Prairie tribes ruled the central area of Lian Prefecture, and the beginning of the era when Shanghai City ruled. Later on, the Great Prairie tribes called the place where Bori Taichi died the Bloody Plain. From time to time, the herdsmen of the Great Prairie would come to pay their respects and remember the glory of the various tribes of the Great Prairie. The destruction of Bori Taichi's tribe was also the turning point of the Battle of Lian Prefecture. After the battle, the City Guard Brigade was responsible for escorting the captives back to Mulan City. Along with the captives, Bori Taichi's head was also brought back. This head would be sent to Shanghai City through the teleportation formation. The main forces of this battle, the 2nd Division and the 4th Division, parted ways on the battlefield. They would carry out the High Command's order and continue to fight for the unification of Lian Prefecture. The 2nd Division turned to the east and headed straight for Duanren County, which was now an empty city. They wanted to completely cut off the Allied Army's retreat and at the same time disband the City Guard Brigade of Duanren County to relieve the siege of Gushin County. As for the 4th Division, they would directly head south and head straight for the Tianjin tribe's lair at the Blessed Lake. The 2 great divisions were like 2 assassins. Under the High Command's arrangement, they carried out the decapitation operation. In the azure sky, a flock of wild geese flew past, lonely and sorrowful. To be continued. Chapter 338. It was still February 13th. The events that happened on this day were enough to dazzle people. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the 2nd Division and the 4th Division set off for the decapitation. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Bori Taikina's head was sent to the High Command. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Di Chun and Warwolf led more than 40,000 troops to Gushin County and completed the encirclement. At 6 o'clock in the afternoon, Lord Chunshin finally persuaded Dai Qin to agree to join forces to attack Shanghai City tomorrow night. Shanghai City. The Chief of Military Affairs, Du Ruhui, secretly went to the camp of the Prairie Coalition Army with an attendant. Dai Qin met Du Ruhui alone in the tent. Du Ruhui lifted her black cloak and spoke first. "General, how have you been?" Dai Qin's face was cold and his tone was stiff. "Just say it. No need to be polite. General is straightforward." Du Ruhui didn't care and said with a smile, "General, please retreat." "What?" Dai Qin seemed to have heard a big joke and said in a deep voice, "Do you believe that if you dare to talk nonsense again, I will make you bleed for 5 steps? Why don't you take a look at the gift Shanghai City prepared for you first?" "Gift? Bring it up." Du Ruhui waved her hand, and the attendant put the wooden box in front of the table. Du Ruhui made an inviting gesture and said with certainty, "General, please examine it." I believe that after you see what is in the box, you will change your mind. Dai Qin's eyes narrowed. He knew that the other party was in a high position and would not speak without thinking. There must be a reason for her visit late at night. Ask your attendant to open the wooden box, Dai Qin said lightly. Who knew if there were hidden weapons in the wooden box? Although the probability was small, Dai Qin didn't want to take the risk. Du Ruhui nodded and signaled the attendant with her eyes. The attendant understood and calmly opened the wooden box. A bloody head was placed in the wooden box. Even with Dai Qin's composure, he couldn't help but exclaim when he saw what was in the box. General, the guards outside the tent heard the sound and were about to rush into the tent. It's okay. You guys guard outside the tent. Dai Qin stopped the guard from entering the tent. Yes. The guards responded and became quiet again. Dai Qin came back to his senses. He stared at the head in the wooden box and said coldly, Bori, Tai China? Not bad. This morning, Bori Tichi's troops were completely annihilated by our army. The remaining troops surrendered. Not only that, Shanghai City's 4th Division has already set off for Providence Lake, Du Hui said casually. Dai Qin's heart trembled, and his expression was extremely unsightly. He gnashed his teeth and said, Do you think that I will believe you just because of a head? His tone was fierce in appearance, but weak in heart. As one of the 3 great generals of the Sky's Boundary tribe, Dai Qin knew all too well that the current Blessed Lake base camp was basically an undefended camp. The clan's troops had all been sent to the northern and southern armies, and the remaining troops were nothing more than shrimp soldiers and crab generals. There was no way they could resist the Shanghai City's army. Dai Qin's face turned deathly pale at the thought that the clan's powerful elders, including the Khan, and even his own wife and children would be slaughtered by the enemy. General, if you don't believe me, you can verify it yourself. As for whether we can make it in time, that's another matter. Dai Qin's face was deathly pale. He did not dare to take this risk. He said in a deep voice, Fine, we will retreat tomorrow. Du Ruhui shook her head and smiled without saying a word. What? What else do you want? Don't go too far, Dai Qin said, gnashing his teeth. Too far. Du Ruhui suddenly stopped smiling and said coldly with a stern expression, General actually said too far? When you raised the army to attack Shanghai City, did you think it was too far? When you attacked the Friendship City, did you think it was too far? What? Now that our army has destroyed your nest, you're telling us that it's too far? An awe-inspiring aura emanated from Du Ruhui's body. At this moment, Du Ruhui was terrifying because he represented the will of the entire Shanghai City. Dai Qin's face turned red, and he did not say a word. There was an awkward silence in the tent. Tell me, what do you want? After a long time, Dai Qin spoke again. His voice was hoarse, no longer as high-spirited as before. As long as you promise not to harm our people, I will agree to any condition. Du Ruhui nodded to herself. She had finally tamed this grassland lion. With the crimes you have committed, no matter what you do, it's not too much to punish you, Du Ruhui said in a low voice. Then, she changed the topic and said, Fortunately, the Marquis is benevolent and is willing to give the grassland tribes a way out. Please speak clearly, Your Excellency. Dai Qin's momentum was completely suppressed. The grassland tribes will completely submit to the Shanghai territory and enjoy the same treatment as the ordinary people in the territory. In the morning, when the news of the great victory spread to Shanghai City, the High Command immediately contacted Ouyang Shua to ask for his opinion. For Ouyang Shua, integrating the grassland tribes into the system of Shanghai City was the best choice. Ouyang Shua was not an executioner. Dai Qin was speechless. I'm just a general. I can't make such a big decision. Don't worry, I won't make things difficult for you, General, Du Ruhui said unhurriedly. The matter of surrender will naturally be discussed by the Marquis personally with the Khan and the leaders of the various tribes. What General needs to do is to lead the Allied army and submit to Shanghai City. Dai Qin sighed and muttered to himself, Perhaps this is the will of the heavens. The Marquis of Lian Province's unification of Lian Province is an irresistible trend. Thinking about the fate of the grassland tribes, Dai Qin didn't know whether he should be happy or worried. Over the past year, the grassland tribes and Shanghai City had been on different sides. Both sides had close trade relations, but it was also filled with conspiracies and betrayals. Dai Qin's vision was profound. Personally, during the period when Shanghai City and the grassland were the closest to each other, he truly felt the impact of Shanghai City's resources on the grassland tribes. Perhaps, submitting to Shanghai City was not the worst choice. Dai Qin turned to look at Du Ruhui and said indifferently, "Rest assured, Your Excellency, Dai Qin will definitely not have second thoughts. Tomorrow, I will lead the troops and submit to Shanghai City. As the main culprit of this battle, I will also bear the due responsibility." Dai Qin's words showed that he was ready to die. In his opinion, although the Marquis of Lian Province was magnanimous and could tolerate ordinary soldiers, he would never let him, the commander of the allied army and the chief war criminal, go. At the critical moment, Dai Qin showed the responsibility and boldness that a general should have, worthy of his reputation as the Black Tiger of the grassland. He was a man worthy of respect. Du Ruhui looked at Dai Qin with a complicated expression and said, "General, you don't have to do this." In fact, the Marquis specifically mentioned that he hopes that General can let bygones be bygones and continue to serve the army of Shanghai City. A glimmer of light flashed in Dai Qin's eyes. Du Ruhui saw the doubt in Dai Qin's expression and continued, "General need not worry. Have you heard of Xiaobu? He has also fought against Shanghai City, but is still valued by the Marquis." Dai Qin nodded, a glimmer of hope rising in his heart. What hot-blooded man did not desire to gallop on the battlefield and make contributions? The Marquis has long heard of General's reputation. However, the Marquis is not in Shanghai City at this time and cannot meet you in person. The Marquis asked me to pass on a message, saying that as long as General is willing to submit, you can lead a division. After a short contact, Du Ruhui was full of praise for this black tiger of the grassland. Dai Qin's heart trembled. The promise made by the Marquis of Lian Province was not light. Just think about the 4 division commanders of Shanghai City. Which one of them was not a famous general of the present age? A man would die for his bosom friend. Dai Qin could no longer suppress the excitement in his heart. He swayed in the direction of the Marquis of Lian Province and said emotionally, "Thank you, Marquis, for your great kindness. Dai Qin will definitely die 10,000 times to repay the Marquis appreciation." Du Ruhui stood at the side and nodded silently. When Dai Qin calmed down, Du Ruhui continued, "As for tomorrow's battle, I still need General's cooperation. My lord, please speak." Dai Qin had already adjusted his identity and considered himself a territorial general. Tomorrow morning, General will lead the army as usual and pretend to attack Shanghai City. Then like this and this. In the tent, Du Ruhui began to plot with Dai Qin and pass on the military orders of the commander-in-chief. It was not until late at night that Du Ruhui took his leave. As for how Dai Qin would convince the generals of the coalition army, it was not within Du Ruhui's scope of consideration. He believed that with Dai Qin's ability and Bori Tik in his head, it would be enough to subdue the generals. The 4th Division's attack was not only on the Blessed Lake, but also on the base camps of the various clans. Du Ruhui believed that no general would be muddle-headed and do anything out of line. Their wives and children were on the prairie, which was their greatest weakness. It had to be said that Bai Qi's move of removing the firewood from the bottom of the cauldron was truly brilliant. He directly targeted the enemy's weakness and completely revitalized the game of chess. Before leaving, Du Ruhui pretended to say casually, "Oh right, there's one more thing I forgot to tell General. My lord, please speak." The former chief of the Tianfeng tribe, Dariachi, and his remnants have been arrested by the Public Order Bureau for plotting a rebellion. All of them have been put on death row and will be sentenced at a later date, Du Ruhui said indifferently. Dai Qin was speechless. He was the one who contacted the remnants of Dariachi's remnants. His goal was to cooperate with them from the inside and outside to open the gates of Shanghai City. He did not expect that before the operation had even begun, Shanghai City had already captured all of them. Most likely, Dariachi had long been under the surveillance of Shanghai City. Thinking of the confidence Dariachi displayed in his letter, Dai Qin could only smile bitterly. Dai Qin gained a deeper understanding of Shanghai City's investigative methods. Dai Qin naturally understood the purpose of Du Ruhui's sudden mention of this matter. It was to remind him that since he had decided to surrender, he should not have any other thoughts. Otherwise, he would go for wool and come home shorn. My lord, please rest assured. At this point, Dai Qin no longer had any other thoughts. Good. One spoke inexplicably, and the other answered inexplicably. Du Ruhui stood up and left, disappearing into the night. The night was as dark as ink, and all was quiet. A new day was about to arrive. To be continued. Chapter 339. February 14th, Gushin County. The sun rose in the east, and the sun shone brightly. The sun shone on the outside of Gushin County, reflecting the dazzling light on the armor of the vast army. The 30,000 Allied troops, together with the Duanren County City Guard Division, came out in full force and surrounded Gushin County. Using storage bags, the Allied troops carried a large number of siege weapons. Hundreds of catapults were pushed to the forefront of the battlefield, lined up in a row, and looked imposing. Gushin County was only a first-class county. No matter how rich the Shanghai territory was, it could not afford to install a large number of crossbows on the city walls of Gushin County. The entire Gushin County was only equipped with 4 crossbows. Facing the hundreds of catapults of the Allied troops, it was insufficient. Fire! At the command of the commander, hundreds of catapults fired at the same time. Stones filled the sky and poured down on Gushin County. The huge stones smashed toward the top of the city walls with the momentum of thunder. When they landed, they made an earth-shattering sound. It was like thunder exploding on the edge of the 100,000 mountains. The loud noise alarmed the animals on the edge of the mountains, and they fled into the depths of the mountains. The scene was spectacular. Not only that, but among the ordinary stones, there were some stones that had been doused with fierce kerosene. After this special stone was ignited, it whistled through the air like a huge fireball. The whistling fireball was like a volcanic eruption, and the end of the world was coming, which made people tremble. Such power was almost comparable to that of ordinary cannons. In ancient times, catapults were also known as cannons, and they were the best siege weapons in the era of cold weapons. This was the root of the problem. One step further, catapults could even throw gunpowder weapons, and their power was even more amazing. The more insidious ones could throw poison or corpses, so that the corpses could spread plagues in the city. This method was extremely vicious, and it could be regarded as the earliest biochemical weapon in ancient times. No one who was hit by the stones was spared. The unfortunate soldiers were smashed into meat paste, and the ballistae were smashed to pieces. Even the sturdiest city walls were blasted into small holes by the catapults. The power of the weapons was evident. Fortunately, no fixed houses were allowed to be built within 20 meters of the city walls during the planning of the city walls. Usually, only a few temporary vendors or tea shops would stay here to do some small business. During the war, the stalls and peddlers had long been cleaned up. Otherwise, over 100 catapults would be enough to smash this area into pieces. As the catapults showed their power, the Allied forces began to attack the city. The densely packed soldiers carried simple and crude siege ladders and braved the rain of arrows as they fearlessly charged towards the city walls. Looking from the sky, the Allied forces looked like a huge black tide that was about to drown the small Gushin County. The 3rd Division was a pure infantry division. It consisted of heavy infantry, pikemen, and swordsmen. The only thing it did not have were crossbowmen, which was extremely disadvantageous for defending the city. At the critical moment, Eli could only let the independent cavalry brigade act as the archer brigade. With the cooperation of the city defense camp, they barely managed to organize a wave of arrows. Warwolf noticed the lack of archers on the enemy's side. His spirit was shaken, and he repeatedly sent troops to attack the city. At this point, the Allied army successfully attacked the foot of the city wall. What happened next was their true nightmare. In just one day, Erlai had recruited 3,000 reserve soldiers. Although these mountain barbarian warriors were on the battlefield for the first time, they were not afraid to fight. Their only task was to continuously throw logs and rocks down the city walls. Because the Allied forces were too densely packed, every hit was accurate. As for the soldiers who attacked the top of the city wall, it was naturally left to the 3rd Division to deal with. The 3rd Division was not good at long-range combat, but it was invincible in close combat. Whether it was heavy infantry or pikemen, all of them were experts in close combat. Therefore, although the Allied forces repeatedly rushed to the top of the city wall, they were stubbornly beaten back by the 3rd Division again and again. They rushed forward one wave and beat back the other. At this time, the top of the city wall was like a meat grinder, which was daunting. Dechen stood at a high place and watched the battle in front of him. He could not help but sigh. Shanghai City's heavy infantry really lives up to its reputation. War Wolf nodded. It's time for our trump card troops to move out. In the second system auction, War Wolf won the Chain Armor Manufacturing Technical Manual, and Dichun won the Shan Wen Armor Manufacturing Technical Manual. Whether it was the Chain Armor or the Shan Wen Armor, they were the best of the best. In a month's time, the two of them used this as a foundation to form their own trump card troops. Although there was only one battalion, they could not be underestimated, especially the Shan Wen Armor, which was one of the best infantry armors. Dechen nodded and agreed with War Wolf's judgment. With a wave of War Wolf's flag, the two trump card troops quickly went out and launched another wave of attacks on the city wall under the cover of the ordinary army. Eli stood on top of the city wall, attacking left and right, fighting with great ease. Seeing that the enemy who rushed up this time was well equipped, he did not care. With a wave of his iron halberd, he swept the enemy off the city wall. The mountain barbarians' heavy infantry still had the upper hand against the Shan Wen Armor's heavy infantry. They had been through hundreds of battles and were born with extraordinary strength. The so-called trump card troops that had just been formed were not taken seriously at all. The only difference was the difference between 1 slash and 2 slashes. Even so, the two trump card troops still restrained the rhythm of the 3rd Division. The Allied forces took the opportunity to speed up the pace of their attack. A large number of soldiers began to successfully climb the city wall and fight with the 3rd Division. For a time, danger was everywhere on the city wall. In the end, the 3rd Division did not have the advantage in numbers. Just as they finished off one enemy, a new group of enemies appeared on the other side. They could not kill them all, and they were at a disadvantage on both sides. What was more worrying was that once the Allied forces gained a foothold on the city wall, they would be followed by a vast number of follow-up reinforcements. If they could not repel this wave of attack, the Gushin County city wall would be in danger of falling. Seeing this scene, Eli showed his might again. He waved his halberd and specifically attacked the Shan Wen Armor heavy infantry. Everywhere he passed, no one was spared. Eli was an ancient, ferocious beast. When a ferocious beast showed its might, it was as if the king of hell had come to the world, invincible. When a ferocious beast was born, there would be a disaster, and it would bring a sea of blood. In an instant, the Shan Wen Armor heavy infantry suffered heavy losses and were almost crippled. Seeing their commander show his might, the mountain barbarian soldiers let out beast-like roars. Their eyes turned red, and their muscles bulged. The wild bloodline hidden in their bodies was stimulated, and they instantly turned into wild beasts. Berserk. It's actually berserk. In the distance, Dichun and War Wolf were shocked. That's right, the mountain barbarian soldiers had gone berserk. After going berserk, the strength of the mountain barbarians increased greatly. They were bloodthirsty and brutal, and they could really kill anyone who stood in their way. The Allied forces that had attacked were scared out of their wits, and they retreated in defeat. For a time, the control of the city wall returned to the hands of the 3rd Division. Seeing that their brothers had gone berserk, the 3,000 reserve soldiers were both happy and envious. Going berserk, this ancient legend among the barbarians, had actually become a reality today. It should be known that this was the highest pursuit of the mountain barbarian soldiers. For decades, there were very few mountain barbarians who could go berserk, and all of them were outstanding talents in the tribe. And now, on this battlefield that was filled with the flames of war, hundreds and thousands of mountain barbarian soldiers had gone berserk together. The root of all this was Wu Lai. It was as if he had come from the distant wilderness, and he brought with him the aura of the wilderness, which stimulated the blood of the mountain barbarians. Coupled with the stimulation of the battlefield, everything happened naturally. What an unparalleled, fierce general. Seeing Wu Lai show his might, old Lien Po could not help but sigh. Di Chun and Warwolf's expressions were somewhat ugly. Victory was in sight, but it was resolved by the enemy just like that. And their trump card troops had basically been exhausted in this battle, and it was already impossible for them to launch a surprise attack. "My lord, let me go," Zhao Zhuang asked. "No," Warwolf flatly refused. What a joke. At this time, Wu Lai was simply an invincible existence. Although Zhao Zhuang's martial arts were not bad, it would be useless to go up now. He did not want to lose another general after losing his trump card troops. Zhao Zhuang let out a long sigh. As a general, it was really a pity that he could not fight with such a fierce general. "Retreat. Today's attack will end here." Di Chun was the calmest. Warwolf nodded and gave the order to retreat. "My lord, don't worry. Going berserk can only be done once, and after going berserk, there will be repercussions. Today, the enemy has been almost exhausted. Tomorrow, we will definitely be able to take down Gushan County in one fell swoop." Lien Po was the most experienced, and his words came true. Good. After listening to Lien Po's analysis, everyone finally walked out of their dejection. Let them live for another day. Military Kill Ripper's eyes were bloodshot. Ba Dao cursed and cursed, but at the same time his heart ached. In this battle, his city guard regiment was the vanguard of the attack, and they had suffered heavy losses. People under the eaves had to bow their heads. Ba Dao's heart had begun to waver. Was it right to participate in the battle between the Yin Huang Alliance and the Shanghai Alliance? Up until now, he had not reaped any benefits, and all he had done was run errands for the Yin Huang Alliance. More importantly, Ba Dao did not feel the slightest bit of dignity. In the eyes of the Yin Huang Alliance, he was probably a dispensable chess piece, right? Or was he a lackey? Ba Dao smiled bitterly. The world was difficult, and it was not easy to be a lord. Warwolf silently stared at the city wall, not far away, but he felt uneasy. He was not as optimistic as the others. The key was still time. It had been a few days since they entered Lianzhou, and none of the strategic goals had been achieved. For the next few days, the army of Shanghai City remained silent. On the surface, it seemed that they were only passively defending and doing nothing. However, with such a large army and a divine general like Bai Qi, Shanghai City's behavior was somewhat abnormal in Warwolf's eyes. Abnormal, it's strange. Zhang Lang sighed and silently walked towards the tent. Seeing that the enemy had retreated, Eli breathed a sigh of relief. The mountain barbarian soldiers woke up from their berserk state and almost collapsed. Eli had already received orders from the high command to hold the fort. 2 days at most, the variables would arrive. At this time, in the northern wilderness, the 2nd Division was on a long-distance attack at the fastest speed. To be continued. Chapter 340. On the same day, at Shanghai City, when the Allied Army attacked Gushan County, Lord Chunshin and the Grassland Allied Army launched an attack on Shanghai City. Lord Chunshin and Xiongba led 20,000 troops to attack the western side of Shanghai City. The 30,000 Grassland Allied Army attacked the northern side, guarding the bridge and blocking reinforcements. The western side was the core of Shanghai City. Because of the agreement with the Grassland Allied Army, the 1st Division defended the western side. As for the northern side, only a few reserves were arranged. The battle at Shanghai City was not as tragic as that at Gushan County because of the Grassland Allied Army's cooperation. Although the Allied Army also brought a large number of catapults, Shanghai City was not like Gushan County. On the city walls, there were dozens of 3-bow, 8-bull crossbows. Its defensive power was astonishing. Therefore, the Allied army's 20,000 troops could not do anything to the city walls guarded by the 1st Division. As a mixed light infantry and cavalry division, the 1st Division was equipped with saber and shield soldiers, pikemen and archers. It was the best combination for defending the city walls. In the morning, the Allied army suffered heavy losses but gained nothing. Shanghai City was still as firm as a rock, standing steadily in the wilderness. Lord Chunxin was no fool. He saw the strangeness of the grassland Allied army. At noon, Lord Chunxin found Dai Qin. "General, what do you mean?" Lord Chunxin's expression was extremely ugly. He almost fell out on the spot. Dai Qin said apologetically, "I have no choice. I strongly support the attack on Shanghai City, but the generals have objections. They complain that the reinforcements came too late and caused them heavy losses. Therefore, the main attack on Shanghai City will naturally be your department's responsibility. The Allied army will only be responsible for restraining Friendship City and Pool City." Lord Chunxin paused and looked embarrassed. A few days ago, he had sat on a mountain and watched the tigers fight, causing the grassland Allied army to suffer heavy losses. Unexpectedly, retribution came so quickly. Fortunately, Lord Chunxin was very shrewd. He lightly changed the topic and said with a smile, "It is not deliberately delaying. We have been traveling day and night. I would like to ask the general to explain to the other officers. I hope that everyone will put aside their former enmity and work together. Look at the long term. As long as we take Shanghai City, won't all our losses be recouped? Your Excellency is right. I will do my best." Lord Chunxin did not receive a reply and felt somewhat helpless. He had no choice but to make another promise, saying, "As long as your esteemed department is willing to cooperate, I promise that after taking Shanghai City, I will hand it over to your esteemed department to manage. How about it?" Dai Qin smiled bitterly in his heart. If the old nest was still there, he would naturally be happy to see it happen. However, it was a pity that Shanghai City was superior to them. Even if he would have promised them a mountain of gold and silver, it would be useless. In other words, as long as the Steppe Alliance army did not suffer heavy casualties, they would have the strength to quickly take down Shanghai City. Dai Qin would also have strange thoughts about it. If they could take down Shanghai City as soon as possible, they would be able to protect the lives of their clansmen. Unfortunately, Shanghai City wasn't something they could take down in a day or two. By that time, the grassland would have already turned into a river of blood. Dai Qin looked sympathetically at Lord Chunxin. This fellow, who was kept in the dark, was probably still dreaming of occupying Shanghai City. Dai Qin's expression didn't change at all. He asked excitedly, "Is this true?" "Of course." Lord Chunxin's voice was warm, like a spring breeze. Those who saw him couldn't help but praise him as a modest gentleman. In reality, Lord Chunxin was disdainful in his heart. A bunch of brainless barbarians, casually making an empty promise and believing it to be true. When Shanghai City is truly occupied and the Allied army converges, how can you say what you want? The two old foxes looked at each other, both believing that victory was in their grasp. Their smiles were as sincere as they could be. Those who didn't know better would think that the two were close friends. Xiong Ba, who was accompanying them, couldn't help but shiver at the sight of Lord Chunxin's smile. While the two sides were fighting, the City Guard Division stationed in Friendship City had already stealthily left the city, crossed the moat, turned west, and then crossed the Friendship River. Without anyone noticing, they circled behind the Allied army. At this point, the Shanghai City army had completely surrounded Lord Chunxin's troops. To avoid alerting the enemy, the Allied army still had to continue attacking the city in the afternoon. Once the 2nd Division captured Duanren County, the Shanghai City army could immediately take down Lord Chunxin's troops. The large net that Bai Qi had weaved was already in place. All that was left was to be drawn in at the last moment. Under Lord Chunxin's supervision, the offensive in the afternoon was naturally more ferocious. In order to cooperate with the Allied army, Shanghai City had no choice but to send a portion of its soldiers to participate in the defense of the northern city wall. Even so, the siege did not improve. Lord Chunxin no longer had any reason to question Dai Qin. He could only return to his tent gloomily. Thus, the day's battle ended strangely. On the 15th of February, the most crucial day of the Battle of Lianzhou arrived. Early in the morning, the 2nd Division finally arrived outside Duanren County. After arriving at Duanren County, Luo Shixin did not immediately attack the city. Instead, he had the Shadow Cavalry lead the 4th Brigade to the territory that the Battle Wolf tribe had teleported from, preparing to exterminate them. This time, Bai Qi wanted to completely cut off the Allied army's retreat and trap them alive in the Lianzhou Basin. The appearance of the army caught Duanren County unprepared. At this time, Duanren County was no different from an empty city. Faced with the menacing 2nd Division, Duanren County was like a wounded wife, unable to retaliate. The 2nd Division rushed into Duanren County effortlessly. Wherever the iron hooves passed, there were wails of victims. If it weren't for Bai Qi's repeated instructions before they left, not to kill innocent people indiscriminately, so as not to affect the territory's future rule over Duanren County would have become hell on earth. After entering the city, Luo Shixin led the army and went straight to the Lord's Mansion. The Lord's Mansion still had some defensive power. Unfortunately, in the face of the 2nd Division, it was tantamount to a mantis trying to stop a chariot. In less than half an hour, the Lord's Mansion was completely taken. Lin Yi led the generals to the meeting hall and began to attack the territory's stone tablet. Only then did Ba Dao receive a system notification. System notification: your territory is under attack. The urgent notification made Ba Dao's heart tremble. He knew it was bad and immediately informed Di Chun and Battle Wolf. At this time, the Allied army was preparing to launch a second attack on Gushin County. Hearing the news, Di Chun and Battle Wolf's hearts trembled and they felt uneasy. It's the army of Shanghai City? Di Chun could no longer remain calm. Who else could it be other than them? Ba Dao was flustered and exasperated. How did they appear? Who knows? For a moment, the Allied army was discussing among themselves, but they couldn't come up with a solution. The development of the situation was really beyond their expectations. Without detailed information, even an old general like Lien Po was helpless. Seeing this scene, Ba Dao's heart turned cold. He said loudly, "I don't care, I have to lead the troops back, or it will be too late." He had completely lost patience with the Yan-Huang alliance. "It's too late to go now. You might as well cooperate with us to take down Gushin County." Di Chun tried to dissuade Ba Dao's reckless behavior. The territory stone tablet could only last for an hour at most. There was no point in rushing over it this time. Strictly speaking, Di Chun's suggestion was not wrong. Unfortunately, the person he was trying to persuade was a lord who was about to lose his mind. "Cooperate with you?" Ba Dao's face was full of mockery. He almost roared at Di Chun. "My territory is about to be taken down. How can I cooperate with you? Take down Gushin County? Stop bragging. You won't be able to take down Gushin County without 2 or 3 days. By then, it will be too late. I shouldn't have listened to you. It would have been better to sign an agreement with Shanghai City. I could have become a rich man." Ba Dao directly went berserk. He no longer listened to Di Chun's advice. His words were no longer polite. "Don't be so shameless." Military kill Ripper couldn't stand it anymore. He had always looked down on Ba Dao. He was just a nobody. He only got in touch with the Yan-Huang alliance because his territory was in the Lianzhou Basin. Otherwise, if it were any other time, no one would bother with him. Ba Dao's face instantly turned black. He stared at military kill Ripper and said something ruthless. "Go to hell." After saying that, Ba Dao too didn't say anything and directly led his troops away. "You!" Military kill Ripper was furious and wanted to chase after him. "Enough." Di Chun's tone suddenly became unfriendly. He glared at military kill Ripper and said loudly, "Have you had enough? Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough?" Di Chun looked at military kill Ripper with dissatisfaction. This boorish man couldn't do proper things, but he was good at making trouble. Originally, he still had a chance to persuade Ba Dao. Now, Ba Dao was completely enraged. Seeing Di Chen's anger, military kill Ripper's heart trembled. He didn't dare to say anything. In an instant, the alliance fell apart. Seeing Ba Dao leave, the leaders of the Yin Huang alliance looked at each other. Battle Wolf stood out to be the peacemaker. All right. Everyone calm down. Yeah, the most important thing now is what should we do next? Are we still going to attack Gushin District? Wandering Huan also said, trying to divert everyone's attention. As soon as he said that, the surroundings became silent. That's right, what should I do next? Not to mention whether or not they could take Gushin District. Even if they could, they would suffer heavy casualties. Did the Alliance still have the ability to attack Shanghai City? Smart people knew that the operation to attack Shanghai City had failed before it was over. A sense of dejection spread among the Alliance. Thinking back to the time when the plan had been made, everyone had been so excited that they couldn't sleep at all. Thinking about how they could deal a fatal blow to not say Wui, the mountain that weighed down on the Yin Huang Alliance. Everyone had been so excited that they couldn't sleep. At the beginning of the war, everything went smoothly. Everything was within their expectations. On the forum, there was also a lot of voices criticizing Shanghai City. Since when did the situation of the war begin to turn around? For a while, no one could give an answer. After a long time, Deechin stood up and said bitterly, "Let's retreat." A cool breeze blew, and there was no sound. To be continued. Chapter 341. Seeing that the Allied forces had retreated, cheers could be heard from within Gushin County. To the common people, war was a devil. It was best to stay far away from it and never see it again. On top of the city wall, the generals came to Eli's side. "General, why did the enemy suddenly retreat?" Lei Jingtian asked. Eli, on the other hand, knew that this was the variable that the commander-in-chief was talking about. "Who cares?" Hui Biao said casually. "That's right. General, what should we do next?" "Catch up." Eli instantly made a decision. No matter what, he couldn't let the enemy retreat comfortably. Wouldn't that be too risky? Lei Jingtian hesitated. "What about Gushin County?" "It's all right." Eli waved his hand. They're no longer in the mood to attack Gushin County. Let LV stay, just in case. The generals nodded. "Gather the army, let's go." "Yes, sir." Just like that, the 3rd Division trailed far behind the Allied forces, monitoring their every move. Ba Dao led the City Guard Division to rescue Duanren County. Before the army had even walked 5 kilometers, Domineering Blade heard the sound of system notification. System notice. Your territory has been occupied. All players within your territory will be automatically teleported to Dali. No. Ba Dao let out a miserable shriek and instantly turned into a beam of white light, disappearing from the Lianzhou Basin. In the end, the ambitious and ruthless tyrannical Blade ended up working for someone else. Ba Dao's ending made people sigh. At this point, the 3 overlords of the Lianzhou Basin in his previous life had all disappeared, and the Lianzhou Basin was unified. A new era was coming. The City Guard Division was at a loss as to what they should do after seeing their leader suddenly vanish. They were just like abandoned children, standing alone in the wilderness. After Luo Shixin occupied Duanren County, he did not stop and led his troops westward. Duanren County was occupied, and the teleportation function had disappeared. There was no need to worry about safety, and there was no need to defend. Luo Shixin's target was the retreating allies. Along the way, the army happened to run into the abandoned Duanren County City Guard Division. "Which unit are you from?" The Guard Battalion commander shouted at Su Wang. The vice commander of the City Guard Division recognized them to be from the Shanghai City Army, and they were most likely the culprits behind the disappearance of their lord. Unfortunately, they no longer had the courage to go against Shanghai City. "General, we are Duanren County's City Guard Regiment." Luo Shixin smiled. "What a coincidence. Duanren County has been occupied. Are you willing to surrender?" The soldiers of the City Guard Division looked at each other. They had also thought of taking revenge, but unfortunately, their arms were no match for the thighs. "We surrender. We surrender." Voices of surrender rang out incessantly. "Good. Luo Shishine was very satisfied with the city guard division's tactfulness. He turned his head and said, "Sun Chuanlin, here." Sun Chuanlin urged his horse forward. "You lead the troops and escort the city guard division to Gushan County." "Yes, sir." Although Sun Chuanlin had his doubts, he still carried out the military order. Seeing the army leaving, Su Wang asked in confusion, "General, why are we escorting them to Gushan County?" Luo Shishine smiled and said, "The reason is very simple. Duanren County was the base of the City Guard Division, and their families were all in Duanren County. Once they are escorted back to Duanren County, I'm afraid there will be trouble." General is wise. The other brigade marshals also felt admiration for Luo Shishine's meticulous thinking. Luo Shishine waved his hand and said, "Let's go. There might be a tough battle waiting for us." "Yes, sir." Shanghai City. As soon as the 2nd Division occupied Duanren County, Ouyang Shuo received a system notification. System notification. Congratulations to player not wearing for occupying Duanren County. Achievement points awarded, 1,000. Ouyang Shuo immediately informed Mu Lanyue the news through the Alliance channel, as she relayed the message to Bai Qi. At the same time, Ouyang Shuo also said in the Alliance channel, "Everyone, it's time to close the net." Immediately, the channel became lively. "Damn it, I've been waiting for you to say that. I've been holding it in for the past few days. It's time to teach those lowly people who look down on our alliance of mountains and seas a lesson. Yes, slap them in the face. Slap, slap, slap." Clearly, the recent negative comments about the alliance of mountains and seas on the forum had affected their mood. Everyone was holding back their anger as they silently arranged their troops into formation. Once the situation in Shanghai City was settled, they would immediately send out their troops to intimidate the surrounding territories and teach them a lesson. As such, it was like a starting gun. In the China region, the various territories of the alliance of mountains and seas simultaneously mobilized their troops. The allies of the Yin-Huang alliance still hadn't received any news. Facing the army of the alliance of mountains and seas, they were caught off guard. All of a sudden, a territorial war that affected the entire China region unfolded. In an instant, the well-informed people from all over the world rushed to spread the news. The forums were once again in an uproar. The alliance of mountains and seas taking the initiative to attack was too unusual. The various authoritative figures were also confused. One thing was for sure, something unusual must have happened in the Battle of Lian Province. The players' gossipy souls began to burn. Unfortunately, whether it was Ouyang Shuo or the Yin-Huang alliance, none of them were interested in revealing the so-called latest developments of the battle on the forums. As for the lords of Lian Province, they couldn't even leave their territories during the war, so they only had a smattering of information about the Battle of Lian Province. Various commentators began to rack their brains, desperately trying to obtain the latest information about the Battle of Lian Province. No matter how lively the outside world was, the rhythm of the battle in Shanghai City was not affected at all. When Bai Qi received the news that Duanren County had been taken, his spirits rose. The time to reel in the net had finally arrived. "Man, here, fire the signal flare. Order the City Guard Division and the Grassland Alliance Army to reel in the net immediately." "Yes, sir." The guards turned around and left. Soon, 2 signal flares rose into the sky from the Marquis' mansion. Dai Qin's expression was complicated when he saw the rising signal flares. He didn't have time to sigh and immediately waved the flag. After receiving the military order, the Alliance army that was attacking the city quickly retreated and assembled outside the city. In less than half an hour, the army had assembled. Dai Qin walked at the front of the army. With a wave of his hand, the majestic army immediately turned west, taking a detour through the northern city gate and arriving at the northern side of the Alliance army. At the same time, the City Guard Division stationed at the western side of the Alliance army immediately led their troops forward. At this point, the Alliance army was besieged on all sides. To the north was the 30,000 Grassland army. To the east was the city wall of Shanghai City, where the 1st Division was stationed. To the south was the Rocky Mountain Range with no way out. To the west was the City Guard Division. The Alliance Army, which only had 15,000 men left, was surrounded by 50 to 60,000 soldiers. The Alliance Army was in a state of panic. "Your Excellency, we are surrounded. The grassland barbarians have betrayed us." "I know." Lord Chunshin gnashed his teeth. He had always been the one scheming against others. He never thought that he would be the one being schemed against. Dai-Chin, once I, Lord Chunshin, am free, I will not forgive you." "General, what should we do now?" Lord Chunshin asked Zhao Kuo for help. Zhao Kuo also wore a sour expression. At first, he had thought that he could compete with Bai Qi. Unexpectedly, before the two of them had even officially fought, his side had already suffered a crushing defeat. Fortunately, after the experience of the Battle of Chongping, Zhao Kuo had become much calmer. He said in a deep voice, "The only thing we can do now is to break through the siege to the west and use the transportation formation we came from." "All right." Lord Chunshin was about to let Zhao Kuo lead his troops to break through the siege. Unexpectedly, the news that reached his ears caused him to freeze on the spot, his face deathly pale. "Your Excellency, has something happened?" Zhao Kuo did not understand Lord Chunshin's sudden action. At this moment, Lord Chunshin was in a daze and his face was frighteningly pale. Just now, news had come from the Alliance Channel. On the east and west side, the two players' territories that had been bribed by the Yan-Huang Alliance had been wiped out by Shanghai City's army. After the two lords who had gloriously died in the line of duty were teleported to Dali, they did not forget to remind the Yan-Huang Alliance's leaders in the Alliance Channel that their mission had been accomplished and that they should not forget the promise they had made. As soon as the news came out, the Alliance Channel was deathly silent. Not only Lord Chunshin, but even Di Chun and the Battle Wolf tribe, who were leading their troops in retreat, were dumbfounded. The Alliance army had sunk into despair. The ones who had wiped out the Eastern Territory were naturally the 2nd Division's 4th Brigade, led by the Shadow Knights. The ones who had wiped out the Western Territory were the City Guard Brigade stationed at Tianfeng City. Before this, Ouyang Shuo had given up his military authority, so there was not a single soldier left in the players' territories on the east and west sides. Compared to the Military Intelligence Division 1, which had performed miraculous feats, the Military Intelligence Division's Special Operations Division, which was responsible for intelligence in the west, was severely reprimanded by Du Ruhui. After the reprimand, Du Ruhui asked the Special Operations Division to atone for their mistakes. They had to find out which territory had broken their contract with Shanghai City and provided teleportation to the Yan-Huang Alliance's army. The leader of the Special Operations Division was no longer Song San, but a newly promoted elite spy. Being reprimanded by the head of the Special Operations Division, he was naturally extremely angry. He directly said to the spies below him, "You bastards, if you still can't find out the truth, I won't have the face to see the marquee. I can only atone for my mistake with death. However, before I apologize, I will definitely twist your heads off." For a moment, the Special Operations Division felt a chill run down their spines. The Special Operations Division spies were like hunting dogs, roaming the west side, investigating each territory one by one. Finally, through some clues, they found out which territory had betrayed them. After receiving the information, Bai Qi immediately ordered Tianfeng City's City Guard Brigade to be responsible for monitoring the territory and be ready to exterminate it at any time. With this arrangement, the Alliance Army's escape route in Lianzhou Basin was completely blocked. "Sir?" Zhao Kuo asked again. "Oh." Lord Chunshin came to his senses and said bitterly, "We have no way out." "What?" Zhao Kuo was shocked. "The territory responsible for receiving us has already been destroyed by Shanghai City. We have no way out." Just as Lord Chunshin finished speaking, the tent was deathly silent. To be continued. Chapter 342. On the evening of February 15th, in Shanghai City, the setting sun was like blood, illuminating both inside and outside of Shanghai City. Outside the Western Gate was a scene of devastation after the war. After completing the encirclement, Bai Qi did not give the Allied forces a chance to choose and immediately launched a fierce attack. The three armies completely suppressed the Allied forces, making them unable to move. After an afternoon of fierce fighting, the Allied forces were completely defeated. They were either killed or surrendered. In this battle, Lord Chunshin died in battle, and Zhao Kuo was captured. This defeat was enough to hurt Lord Chunshin to the bone. Not only was Zhao Kuo, whom they had worked so hard to subdue, captured, but all the elite generals in the army were either captured or killed in battle. This was undoubtedly one disaster after another for Danyang County, whose military was not strong to begin with. In particular, Zhao Kuo's capture would be Lord Chunshin's greatest loss in the past year. Presumably, Lord Chunshin needed some time to heal his wounds. The Battle of Lian Province was destined to be Lord Chunshin's Waterloo battle. Zhao Kuo was captured, and he was prepared to die. The strange thing was that he wasn't sent to prison. Instead, he was temporarily placed under house arrest in Marquis Lian's mansion. Ouyang Shuo was prepared to use Zhao Kuo. As a lord, the most important thing was to put the right person in the right position. Zhao Kuo had his own stage. Lord Chunshin had died in battle. Naturally, all of his equipment had been dropped. According to Mulan Yue, among the equipment that Lord Chunshin dropped, there was a purple gold accessory that was extremely suitable for Ouyang Shuo. As for what it was, the little girl kept him in suspense. She would have to wait until Ouyang Shuo returned to Shanghai City to unravel the mystery. As for the other main character of the Yanhuang Alliance, Xiongba, he received a different treatment. Xiongba was already prepared to die, but after a turn of events, he won a chance of survival. Following Ouyang Shuo's instructions, Bai Qi released Xiongba and the important generals under his command. They were allowed to leave the Lian Province basin through the teleportation portal in Shanghai City. There were two reasons why Ouyang Shuo did this. Firstly, he wanted to befriend Xiongba and plant a seed within the Yanhuang Alliance. Secondly, it was also to deliberately divide the relationship between Lord Chunshin and Xiongba. The two of them were in the same trench, but their treatment was completely different. Even though Lord Chunshin could see through Ouyang Shuo's sinister intentions, he still held a grudge against Xiongba. To Xiongba, it was impossible for him to reject such kindness. For a lord, the life and death of an individual was not important. The death of ordinary soldiers was not enough to hurt the territory. The real key was still the backbone generals that they had painstakingly trained. If they died in battle, it would be a disaster for the army. It would be extremely difficult to nurture them again. This move of Ouyang Shuo's was an open and above-board scheme, and Xiongba was unable to refuse it. After the battle, the various armies began to calculate the casualties. According to statistics, a total of 8,000 soldiers of the Allied army had surrendered. All of them had been unarmed and temporarily detained. Like a cornered beast, the army of Shanghai City also suffered sacrifices. The grassland Allied army lost more than 2,000 people, and in the end, only 28,000 soldiers were left. What awaited them was a complete reorganization by the Military Affairs Office. The City Guard Division had lost a total of more than 4,000 men, a heavy loss. Most of the casualties occurred when the grassland Allied forces attacked Friendship City. It was precisely because of this that the City Guard Division and the grassland Allied army held a grudge. Affected by this, even Zhao Sihu and Dai Qin were not on good terms. This knot in his heart was not easy to resolve. As for the First Division, the loss of more than 1,500 men was considered good. After taking care of the Allied Western Army, Bai Qi's eyes were already on the Allied Eastern Army. After the battle, Bai Qi ordered the 1st Division to rest for a night and rush to the Eastern War Zone the next day. The City Guard Division guarded Shanghai City, while the grassland Allied Army waited for reorganization. Before completely subjugating the grassland tribes, Bai Qi was still a little worried about the grassland Allied army. He dared not let them leave his sight and enter the battlefield independently. The same setting sun, the same desolation. In the wilderness, the Eastern Army camp. Di Chun, Zhang Lang, Wandering Huan, Military Kill Ripper, Lien Pe, and Zhao Zhuang gathered together. The Western Army has been annihilated. If nothing unexpected happens, Shanghai City will send an army to encircle us tomorrow. Everyone, do you have any ideas? Di Chun was the first to speak. There was a moment of silence. The successive setbacks had already made them despair. The only way is to fight to the death. Fight to the death? Even if we fight to the death, what can we do? Can we still walk out of Lianzhou Basin alive? But we can't surrender. Even if we die, we have to bite a piece of Shanghai City's meat. Stupid. Let's talk business. Di Chun was a little annoyed. Di Chun's shrewdness was much deeper than military kill rippers. As soon as he knew that Duanren County was besieged, Di Chun had already contacted his family secretly. After learning about the situation in Lianzhou, which concerned the survival of the Yan-Huang alliance, the older generation of the family was also alarmed. They formed a think tank to discuss countermeasures. The discussion came and went. The only way was to persuade another territory to tear up the contract with Shanghai City. This was difficult but not impossible. In this world, nothing was absolute. The only thing that mattered was whether you were willing to pay the price. With the strength of the Di family, they naturally had the confidence to do so. Thinking about it, there would be results as soon as tonight. Di Chun had to think about how to get rid of the Shanghai City army. Right now, the 3rd Division was like a hunting dog, chasing after the Allied army. Tomorrow, there would definitely be more troops coming to attack. By that time, even if he managed to contact the territory, he would not be able to secretly teleport back to his territory under the nose of the Shanghai City army. The only way was to sacrifice the rook to save the king. At the thought of this, Di Chun's eyes swept across the crowd, remaining silent. Who would be the sacrificial pawn? Not all of them could leave. 1 or 2 had to stay to attract the attention of the Shanghai City army. Lien Pa had to be taken away. He was his lifeblood. Battle Wolf was the ally he was fighting for, so he had to inform him. If Battle Wolf left, Zhao Zhuang would naturally follow. Only Wandering Huan and Military Kill Ripper were left. Wandering Huan was the best friend of his sworn enemy, Xiongba. He was the first to be abandoned by Di Chun. Finally, there was Military Kill Ripper. Thinking of Military Kill Ripper's recklessness and the ambiguous relationship between him and Lord Chunshin, Di Chun's eyes turned cold. He decided to completely abandon this chess piece. With the plan decided, Di Chun felt a wave of relief. He silently watched the quarreling people. Among them, only Battle Wolf vaguely sensed Di Chun's strangeness. In the end, the discussion ended on bad terms. Battle Wolf intentionally left it to the end. Sure enough, Di Chun stopped him. After listening to Di Chun's plan, Battle Wolf was silent. He had mixed feelings. Di Chun's way of doing things was completely different from Battle Wolf's. Battle Wolf could not blame Di Chun. After all, everyone had their own ambitions. I will remember this favor. Battle Wolf finished speaking and walked out of the tent. Di Chun looked at Battle Wolf's back in silence. How could everything go smoothly in a family like his? In the darkness of the night, a team of 100 people quietly left the camp and disappeared into the wilderness. The next day, the Allies woke up. Military Kill Ripper and Wandering Huan were shocked to find that Di Chun and Battle Wolf had disappeared. Along with Di Chun and the others, a group of their backbone generals also left. We have been abandoned. Wandering Huan's face was ugly. Military Kill Ripper even cursed. Di Chun. The 2 poor people who had been abandoned looked at each other in silence. Wandering Huan looked at Military Kill Ripper with an indescribable expression. He already knew that Xiongba had been released by Shanghai City. Military Kill Ripper, as a sworn enemy of He Wui, would definitely die in Lianzhou Basin. He did not have to die with him. What should we do now? Military Kill Ripper asked. Wandering Huan, who already had other ideas in his mind, pretended to be helpless and said, "Before the army of Shanghai City arrives, let's just do this." What do you mean by that? In my opinion, since we're going to die in Lianzhou Basin anyway, why not lead the army and kill some people in Shanghai territory? Killing 1 is worth it, and killing 2 is worth it. Wandering Huan's heart trembled. He knew that his opportunity had come. On the surface, Wandering Huan was still calm and said, "Okay, then come to my tent and discuss the specific route of the army. Let's go." Military Kill Ripper did not notice anything strange. As soon as he entered Wandering Huan's tent, he was immediately taken down by Wandering Huan and killed in a flurry of sabers. As the saying went, "It was better for me to die than for you." Military Kill Ripper. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for being too arrogant. Military Kill Ripper, in such a comedic way, became a completely abandoned pawn. After killing Military Kill Ripper, Wandering Huan hid the news of his death while sending people to contact the 3rd Division and expressed his willingness to lead the troops to surrender. When Eli received the news, he immediately gathered his generals for a discussion. "There's something fishy about this." Lei Jingtian was a natural conspiracy theorist. "Who cares if it's a conspiracy or not? In my opinion, we should take them down first," Zhang Dainiu said, which was rare for him. He continued, "Let the general and marquis handle the rest." "Well said. Let's take them down first." Eli nodded in agreement. Just like that, the matter was settled. On the morning of February 16th, Wandering Huan led the Eastern Army and officially surrendered to the 3rd Division. After the Eastern Army surrendered, the 2nd Division arrived. Seeing this, Luo Shixin was also dumbfounded. He had expected that there would be a tough battle ahead. As for the 1st Division, they had just left Shanghai City. The Battle of Lianzhou ended in such a dramatic manner. After that, with Ouyang Shua's approval, Wandering Huan and his generals were all released. Thus, the Battle of Lianzhou officially ended. In this battle, the Yanhuang alliance had suffered a double loss. Not only that, but because of the subsequent series of schemes and betrayals, cracks had already appeared within the Yanhuang alliance. Military Kill Ripper and Di Chun had completely fallen out. With Wandering Huan, they had become mortal enemies. Lord Chunxin and Xiongba had also begun to drift apart. In order to protect Wandering Huan, Xiongba had once again gone against Military Kill Ripper. All in all, it was a mess. Only Di Chin's strength had not been greatly affected, and he had successfully won over a powerful ally in Battle Wolves. Using this opportunity, Di Chun had once again established his position as the leader of the Yanhuang alliance. A mature Di Chun was indeed terrifying. To be continued. Chapter 343. The Battle of Lian Province had just ended, and the aftermath was endless. Ignoring the fact that the members of the Mountain and Sea Alliance were attacking everywhere and rapidly expanding their territory. The main character of this incident, Shanghai City, was what the players were most concerned about. The 2 lords whose territories had been annihilated secretly sold the news to Bai Shaosheng. Bai Shaosheng then combined other information and wrote a long comment on the forum. The Mountain and Sea Alliance's counterattack and the Yanhuang Alliance's end. As soon as the post was published, it immediately caused a sensation. Only then did the players realize that the battle in Lian Province had been reversed. Not only had the Yanhuang Alliance not gained any advantage, but they had also suffered a double loss. When the news came out, everyone was naturally taken aback. For a time, there were slaps on the face everywhere. Mountain Sea City has turned the tables on us. The Yanhuang Alliance's strength has been greatly weakened, and they no longer have the strength to compete with the Mountain and Sea Alliance. Retreating in order to advance. Shanghai City's plans are profound. A trap. A huge trap. Shanghai City is inviting you to enter the trap. The god of slaughter by Qi is truly invincible. In the time it takes for him to joke around, the Alliance army has been annihilated. After Lord Chunxin lost his life to the Shanghai City army twice, he vomited 3 liters of blood. Military Kill Ripper has died 3 times. I'm not satisfied. China's biggest joke? The Yanhuang Alliance has returned to the top? Other than ridicule, there were also groups of people who were kneeling down and licking his boots. If Wu unifies Lianzhou, his hegemony will be in sight. Lord Wu didn't even need to do anything himself, and the Yanhuang Alliance was defeated in my city. What a godly person! The major forces are completely defeated. and the civilian players are taking the opportunity to rise. Shanghai City has shocked the entire world. On the forum, there was another war of words. Some of the so-called authoritative figures who had tried their best to speak ill of Shanghai City and support the Yan-Huang alliance were instantly slapped in the face and no longer dared to speak on the forums. Normal players were just watching the show, but those who were truly observant were secretly shocked. Whether it was Jack of the United States or Wan Tianke of the Annan district, they all looked solemn. The nearby Japanese and Korean districts were even more silent. Amidst the clamor, the players were even more eager to understand the details of the war. Unfortunately, apart from the Shanghai City High Command, there was probably no one else who knew the details of this battle. After the establishment of the military force lecture hall, the war saint, Sun Wu, specially invited by Qi to write down the details of the battle in Lianzhou into a case study for teaching purposes. Bai Qi even took time out to teach the first batch of students in the lecture hall. The first lecture was about the Battle of Lian Province that had just ended. The Battle of Lianzhou also became another classic example of Bai Qi's combat characteristics of focusing on the construction of fortifications, implementing the tactics of a large detour and a large encirclement, and combining positional warfare with mobile warfare. The only difference was that the war had become more complicated and the factors of teleportation and communication had to be considered. Bai Qi was undoubtedly applying what he had learned. While he was dealing with the teleportation of his allies, he was also using the advantage of teleportation to the extreme. It was the teleportation of the 2nd Division that became the stroke of genius in this battle, setting the general tone of the war in one fell swoop. Bai Qi was using this method to declare his existence. Shanghai City had once again amazed the world. Just like what the forums had said, after this battle, the Yan-Huang alliance would be quiet for a while. They needed to hide in the dark and slowly heal their wounds. As for whether or not they would really fall, Ouyang Shuo did not believe it. The deep foundations of the various major powers had already been revealed in the Battle of Lianzhou. Especially at the last stage, Di Chen's cicada shedding carapace had shocked Ouyang Shuo. In such a thrilling situation, they were still able to convince a certain lord to surrender. Just thinking about it was terrifying. Moreover, the only ones who were truly hurt in this battle were Lord Chunshin and Kill Ripper. The other members of the Yan-Huang alliance had only lost some teleportation fees and elite soldiers. To the territories, these could be slowly recovered with the accumulation of time. After this battle, Ouyang Shuo no longer dared to look down on these old powers. In his previous life, he was only an adventure-type player and did not have the qualifications to fight against the 6 tyrants of Handan City. His understanding of them was limited. Was the strength that the Yan-Huang alliance had displayed just the tip of the iceberg? Everything was unknown. After the Battle of Lianzhou, Shanghai City had basically been exposed to the Yan-Huang alliance, and there were no longer any secrets. This was also one of the reasons why Ouyang Shuo was so anxious to open up the Cliff State. He had to gain more strategic depth for his territory and have more trump cards. Apart from that, the determination that the Yan-Huang alliance had revealed made Ouyang Shuo wary. The Yan-Huang alliance had planned this battle for a long time, and their goal was clear, which was to kill him in one blow. As the Shanghai alliance's influence grew, he had become a thorn in the Yan-Huang alliance's side, and they wanted to get rid of him as soon as possible. The Yan-Huang alliance's style of doing things was also becoming clear. Once they struck, they had to be fatal. Ouyang Shuo sighed. As a commoner, he wanted to challenge the entire China region's power. It was a long and arduous journey, and every step was filled with danger and thorns. On the road to hegemony, one could not stop for even a moment. After the battle, the military was in a state of unprecedented bustle. First and foremost was the reorganization of the army. In this battle, the 4 field divisions and the City Guard Division had lost a total of 12,000 men. The City Guard Division and the 3rd Division had suffered the heaviest losses, and both had fought a tough battle. As for the prisoners of war, Borite's troops had surrendered 3,000 men, and the Grassland Alliance had 28,000 men left. Lord Chunshin's troops had surrendered 8,000 men, Duanren County City Guard Division had surrendered 7,000 men, and the Allied Eastern Army Division had surrendered 20,000 men. In total, there were more than 66,000 men, which was a very shocking number. The first step was to transfer soldiers from the prisoners of war to replenish the losses of the divisions. After filling in the gaps, there were still 54,000 prisoners of war waiting to be reorganized, which was equivalent to 4 divisions. Because the number of prisoners of war was too large, Ouyang Shuo personally instructed the military to eliminate as many wounded or unqualified soldiers as possible and arrange for them to be retired. The main targets of elimination were the Grassland Cavalry and Duanren County City Guard Division. The former had some cavalry that was temporarily conscripted during the war and were all disbanded. The latter was uneven and was also an important target for elimination. As for the Allied forces, they were basically all elite troops. Other than the wounded and some die-hard loyalists, they were basically retained. The mission of the military office was to reorganize 3 field divisions and 2 city guard brigades from the prisoners of war. The Independent Cavalry Brigade, which had always been outside the system, was also included in the scope of reorganization. The remaining prisoners of war were all included in the reserve force. The specific personnel changes and adjustments to the structure of the army would have to wait until Ouyang Shuo returned to make a final decision. Other than reorganizing the army, the military office was also responsible for post-war compensation, logistics, and other tedious work. Of course, there was also the stabilizing of the situation in the grassland. After the Allied Eastern Army Division surrendered, Bai Qi immediately ordered the 2nd Division to immediately rush to the grassland to assist the 4th Division in stabilizing the situation. Before that, Mu Ging had already led the 4th Division into the Blessed Lake. Before the Tianji tribe could react, all the nobles and royalty of the Tianji tribe were captured in one fell swoop. The 2nd Division's mission was to detain all the nobles of the 7 medium-sized tribes at the Blessed Lake and wait for Ouyang Shuo's return to deal with them. In fact, when the news of the defeat of the Allied forces reached the grassland, all the tribes were already disheartened. The war had almost squeezed out all the tribes' combat potential. It was impossible to organize an army again. Before they could come up with any ideas, the 2nd Division had already launched a powerful attack. This was what it meant to be meat on the chopping block. The nobles of the tribes could only obediently submit. Otherwise, only death awaited them. The last one was the arrangements for the North Sea Fleet. In the Battle of Lian Province, the North Sea Fleet was a solid bystander. They basically had no chance to participate. After the war, the fleet would escort the 2nd batch of immigrants to Cliff Province. The 2nd batch of immigrants were mostly craftsmen, especially stonemasons, masons, and carpenters. In addition, the fleet also carried a large amount of food and vegetables that could be stored for a long time. Bai Qi had asked Ouyang Shuo if he should arrange for a large army to go with the fleet to support Cliff Province. Ouyang Shuo thought about it and rejected the arrangement. He had a comprehensive plan for the army. He had to wait until he returned to Shanghai City before making a unified arrangement. Other than military affairs, Ouyang Shuo also had arrangements for the political map of Lian Province after the war. Duanren Manor was established, and Duanren County was renamed Duanren City. Yi and Gushin counties would be included in Duanren Manor's jurisdiction. Subsequently, Ouyang Shuo announced 2 personnel appointments. Yishui County Magistrate Zhou Haichun would be transferred to Duanren Manor. Zhao Duan would replace Zhou Haichun as Yishui County Magistrate. Without waiting for Ouyang Shuo's appointment, both of them immediately took up their posts. In front of Zhou Haichun was a mess. He needed to appease the people, restore production, and plan the next step of Duanren Manor's development in a short period of time. Taking charge of Duanren Manor was a comprehensive test of Zhou Haichun's ability. Zhou Haichun's performance in Duanren Manor would determine whether he could take another step forward in the territory's future. The construction of Tianfeng City's walls was nearing completion, and Zhao Diwang's contribution was the greatest. Ouyang Shuo would not mistreat this former subordinate, placing him in Yishui County with great potential. Limited by his qualifications and experience, Zhao Diwang's official career would end here. As for the plans for the prairie, they would have to wait for Ouyang Shua's return. Just like that, Ouyang Shua, through Mulan Lanyue's words, basically arranged the military and political affairs of Lian province after the war. The rest would be carried out by the 4 bureaus. After the arrangements were made, Ouyang Shua's gaze returned to the Cliff province. To be continued. Chapter 344. From February 7th to February 16th, the battle in Lianzhou lasted for 10 days. During these 10 days, the construction in Lianzhou did not stop for even a moment. Under the leadership of the secretary, Lang Bai Nanpu, the construction of the port, salt works, farms, quarries, and lumberyards was in order. All the big stalls were basically spread out, waiting to reap the fruits of victory. The Imperial Guard Brigade was full of energy. For this group of warmongers, it was undoubtedly very depressing to miss the battle in Lianzhou. They did not dare to blame the Marquis, so they could only vent their anger on the wild beasts and wild beasts. During these 10 days, the soldiers of the Imperial Guard Brigade hunted the wild beasts desperately, as if they had taken gunpowder. Every day, they set off at dawn and did not return to the camp until the sky was dark. The nearby wild beasts suffered. The Imperial Guard Brigade's clearing speed was constantly increasing. The clearing work that was originally estimated to take half a month was now nearing its end. Tomorrow, Ouyang Shua would take Bing'er to establish a new territory. February 17th, Gaia Year 2, Lianzhou. After breakfast, Ouyang Shua stopped Bing'er, who was about to go out again. During this time, the little girl had gone crazy playing again. The beach was no longer her main battlefield. The entire area nearby had been thoroughly explored by the little lass. For this reason, Ouyang Shua had to arrange for 4 guards to follow and protect Bing'er. From morning to night, Bing'er took the 4 little ones and ran around everywhere. It was difficult for Ouyang Shua to see her. As the little girl grew older, she became more and more independent. Because of the age gap, Ouyang Shua had the illusion that his daughter had grown up. I have a daughter who has just grown up. What he was talking about was precisely this kind of complicated emotions. Baby, let's not go out to play today. I'll take you to do something interesting. What interesting thing? Ouyang Shua suddenly became naughty and knocked on her little head. You'll know when you get there. Oh. Bing'er touched her little head and looked at her bad brother with an aggrieved look. Humph. Her brother must be jealous that the cute Bing'er could play every day, so he deliberately bullied her. It must be like this. After thinking about it, the cute Bing'er decided to forgive her brother. The little girl imitated Ouyang Shua's usual way of doing things. She folded her hands behind her back and took small steps. Then, she turned her head and said, Brother, let's go. Bing'er will play with you today. Ouyang Shua shook his head in amusement. What a clever fellow. Walking out of the small building, he saw the Imperial Guards waiting in formation outside the camp. In addition, Bai Nanpu and a group of Chamber of Commerce leaders were also waiting outside the small building. For the Expeditionary Army, today was a milestone. Those with a certain status naturally rushed over, ready to witness this historic moment. Seeing this, Ouyang Shua's interest was piqued. He made an impromptu speech, reviewing the hardships of the Expeditionary Army and looking forward to the broad development prospects of the Cliff Prefecture. Ouyang Shua wasn't stingy with his gratitude toward the large merchant guilds that had been supporting the Expeditionary Army all along. Ouyang Shua's unconventional speech won the applause of the audience. At 8 o'clock in the morning, the team set off for the location of the village. The location that Ouyang Shua chose to build the village was in the north-south direction, right in the middle of Ningyuan River and Nanshan Hill. Cliff State Bay was 20 kilometers to the west. To the east, the Five Fingers Mountain Range was about 60 kilometers away. Under the suppression of the Imperial Guards, there were no wild beasts within a 10-kilometer radius. It was a safe area. Ouyang Shua took out the Silver Grade Village Creation Token and called Bing'er to his side. As Bing'er's guardian, Ouyang Shua could manage the territory on her behalf, but Bing'er had to do the building herself. On the way here, Ouyang Shuo had already explained the key points of building the village to Bing'er. Bing'er was quick-witted, so she naturally understood immediately. She also felt that this matter was extremely important to her brother, so she took it very seriously. Although the little girl mocked her brother, in her heart, she liked him very much. Bing'er took the village creation token from Ouyang Shuo's hand and stuck it into the ground with great effort. Then, she bit her little finger and dripped a drop of blood onto the token. Bing'er didn't even frown during the whole process. Seeing this, everyone nodded to themselves. Strictly speaking, Bing'er was the ruler of this expeditionary army in name. They saw that the little princess had a tough personality. At such a young age, she could even endure the pain of biting her finger. As expected of a marquis, when the blood dripped onto the village creation token, the village creation token immediately turned into a ball of gentle silver light. The silver light shot up into the sky and exploded in the air, turning into a ball of silver light that spread in all directions. The light spread all the way to the edge of the territory before disappearing. At the same time, a silver stone tablet slowly rose from the ground where Bing'er stood. The stone tablet was 9 feet tall and 3 feet wide. Bing'er pressed her palm on the stone tablet, and a system notification sounded. System notification. Congratulations to player Ouyang Bing for successfully building a village. Please name your village. Cliff Village. Bing'er read out the name of the village that her brother had told her. As soon as she finished speaking, the words Cliff Village appeared on the front of the stone tablet. System notification. Player Ouyang Bing is not of age yet. She can appoint a guardian to manage the territory on her behalf. Do you want to appoint a guardian? Yes, Bing'er said and appointed Ouyang Shuo as her guardian. System notification. Guardian requirements met. Appointment successful. At the same time, a system notification sounded in Ouyang Shuo's ears. System notification. Player Ouyang Bing has appointed you as her guardian. You will have the same authority as Ouyang Bing and have the right to manage the territory of the Cliff Village. It wasn't over yet. The sound of a few system notifications sounded out successively by Ouyang Shuo's ears, blasting him to the point he felt dizzy. System notification. Player Ouyang Bing has been detected to be very lucky. The village creation token has been automatically upgraded from silver to gold. Congratulations to player Ouyang Bing. System notification. Player Ouyang Bing has been detected to be very charming. The reward is an Emperor Historical General, Fan Lihua. Please check for yourself. Congratulations to player Ouyang Bing. System notification. Player Ouyang Bing has been detected to be very talented. The reward is a hidden building, Spirit Beast Pavilion. Please check for yourself. Congratulations to player Ouyang Bing. Oh my god, Bing'er is going against the heavens. As such, the starting point of the Cliff Village that Bing'er had created was even higher than the Shanghai Village that Ouyang Shuo had created. At this moment, Ouyang Shuo had to admit that he was jealous of his own sister. Back then, he had relied on the advantage of being reborn to complete the village creation quest 100% to obtain a precious gold village creation token and an Emperor Historical General summoning talisman. Bing'er, on the other hand, didn't have to do anything. Just by relying on her own luck and charm, the village creation token had been automatically upgraded to a gold village creation token and an Emperor Historical General summoning talisman. What was even more ridiculous was that there was even a hidden building. It was true that all the benefits were taken by the little lass. How could he not be jealous? Thinking about his own pitiful luck and charm, Ouyang Shuo's heart ached. He couldn't say anything else. His eyes were filled with tears. Ouyang Shuo sighed as he finished setting up the territory. After setting it up, Ouyang Shuo looked at the territory's attributes. Territory, Cliff Village, Level 1 Village, Lord. Ouyang Bing, First Class Baron, Acting Lord, Not Wearing, Second Class Marquis, Title, None Popular Support, 70 Public Security, 75 Territory Population, 1, 570/200 Territory Characteristics. See Chapter 6 for details. Existing buildings, Village Lord's Mansion, Primary Market, Hidden Building, Spirit Beast Pavilion. List of basic construction buildings. The attributes of Cliff Village were almost the same as those of Shanghai Village. The difference was first the population base, and second, the addition of a hidden building, Spirit Beast Pavilion. Among the territory's population, the Imperial Guard Brigade was not counted. The population included all kinds of craftsmen, skilled talents, and basic government personnel who came with the army this time. Ouyang Shuo looked at the attributes of Spirit Beast Pavilion. Name, Spirit Beast Pavilion. Type, hidden building. Function, helps to promote the evolution of Spirit Beast's characteristics. Special talent attraction rate increased by 10. Territory popularity increased by 10. Description, this is a pavilion specially built for Spirit Beasts. It can accommodate up to 3 Spirit Beasts or wild beasts to cultivate in the pavilion at the same time. The daily cultivation time cannot exceed 1 hour. The description was simple, but the effect was extraordinary. Didn't you see that as soon as the Spirit Beast Pavilion was created, Little White and Little Green couldn't wait to rush in? At this time, the system's gift of a general had already rushed over from the village entrance. The newcomer was riding a white horse, wearing a red robe and silver armor. She held a long knife in her hand and was incomparably beautiful, like a proud pear flower in full bloom. It was Fan Lihua, one of the 4 ancient heroines of China. Fan Lihua came to Binger, turned over the horse, and knelt on one knee. "Greetings, my lord." Binger had seen the world after all. Her days in the Lord Protector's mansion were not in vain. The little girl helped Fan Lihua up and called out crisply, "Pretty sister." The beauty smiled. She immediately fell in love with this little lord. Ouyang Shuo looked at the 2 beauties who had not seen each other for a long time and nodded slightly. Name, Fan Lihua, Emperor level. Title, one of the 4 ancient heroines of China Dynasty, Tang Dynasty. Identity, General of Cliff Village. Occupation, Special Class General. Loyalty, 80 Commander, 75 Force, 80 Intelligence, 78 Politics, 50 Specialty, Wisdom and Courage. Increases troop morale by 40. Battles in the south and north. Increases troop movement speed by 30. Insight. Increases troop attack power by 20. Martial arts. Embroidery sword. Scripture. Equipment. Embroidery sword. Remarks. Wisdom and courage. Peerless beauty. Advocates righteousness. Takes the overall situation into consideration and returns good for evil. Not only is she a woman who dares to love and hate, but she is also a powerful, resourceful, and well-versed general of the army. To be continued. Chapter 345. Compared to Mu Guiying, Fan Lihua was even better. She was the leader of the 4 heroines. In the legends, Mu Guiying and Fan Lihua were disciples of the old mother of Blackfall Mountain. Among their peers were Zhong Wuyin from the Warring States period, Zhu Yingtai from the Eastern Jin Dynasty, and Bai Sujin from the Southern Song Dynasty. In the game world created by Gaia, the old mother of Blackfall Mountain was an ethereal existence that could not be trusted. Ouyang Shuo was looking at Fan Lihua's attributes when he heard a series of system announcements. System announcement. Congratulations to player Feng Qiuhuang for becoming the 2nd Lord of China to be promoted to a level 1 county city. Achievement points awarded. 4,200. System announcement. Congratulations to player White Birch for becoming the 3rd Lord of China to become a level 1 county city. Achievement points awarded. 4,000. When the announcement was made, the players in the China server remained calm. When Feng Qiuhuang and Bai Hua were conferred the titles of Marquis Scarlet Phoenix and Marquis Rhino, respectively, the players had already predicted the advancement of the 2 territories. If it weren't for the battle in Lian Province, they would have advanced to the next level much earlier. What was interesting was that the Luofeng County had advanced before the Lingxi County. Feng Qiuhuang, you really have a way. Ouyang Shuo only felt that it was interesting, but the 4 sisters, Qing, Hong, Purple, and White, were a little depressed. They were originally full of confidence and were prepared to take 2nd place in the China region. However, Feng Qiuhuang, who was all alone, beat them to it. That's why you should never underestimate your opponent. Feng Qiuhuang had taught the 4 sisters a good lesson. The prefectural city was the true starting point for a truly ambitious lord. Only by becoming a county city would the territory truly be able to take root in the wilderness. Regardless of whether it was the roving bandits of the wilderness or the rebel army, wanting to take down a county city was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. The county city was the beginning of hegemony. The second year of Gaia would also become the year of the county city. If the territory had not been promoted to a county city by the end of the second year of Gaia, it basically meant that the territory had completely lost the qualifications to vie for the world. There was a qualitative difference between a county city and a county city. Not only did it represent a change in the level of the city, but more importantly, it meant that the territory would change from a single city to a prefecture. For the feudal lords, while bringing more power, they would also face greater challenges. The role of talents, especially high-end talents, became even more prominent. Because the lords were basically all young people, it was easier said than done for them to manage a county. Even Di Chun and the others couldn't control the operation of a county without assistance. Not to mention the siege lion, dragon seeking acupoint, and the others. They were all ordinary people in real life, and when they played the game, they were just adventurers. As for the management of the territory, which was a great test of the Lord's abilities, he could only slowly explore it. At the county level, he could still control it freely. Once they reached the county capital, the slightest bit of carelessness could cause them to derail. In this aspect, Gaia had a very precise grasp of the scale. Its ultimate goal was to nurture a group of lords or governors in the real world. If a lord could last until the end, it would be 10 years of work. From village head, town head, county magistrate, county governor, and even founding a country, the gradual tempering was enough to forge a good piece of material into a good piece of steel. The members of the Alliance of Mountains and Seas could be considered lucky in this regard, because with Ouyang Shaw, the model lord, leading the way, as long as they followed his lead, they would basically not make any mistakes in the general direction. Some of the measures that Ouyang Shaw implemented in his territory were original, but most of them were the results of the personal practice of countless lords in his previous life. In the end, Ouyang Shaw was only standing on the shoulders of giants. The reason why Ouyang Shaw was able to last until now was because of his rebirth, which allowed his temperament and experience to far exceed that of his peers. Furthermore, he had the assistance of a large number of historical talents. After the advancement of the Shanghai County, Ouyang Shaw decisively reformed the system and implemented the county system. The Battle of Lian Province was a strong proof. Even if Ouyang Shaw wasn't there, the High Command Department had by Qi and Du Ruhui, and the division commanders were all famous generals who could make decisions according to the situation. In addition, the government system operated smoothly. How could they not win? Therefore, the further they went, the more they had to rely on the strength of the team. The Lord was the helmsman and navigator of the team. In his previous life, the Lords didn't agree on the mode of operation of the county capital. In general, there were two modes that were popular. The first was the county system that Ouyang Shaw was implementing. The county system was suitable for most of the territories. The advantage was that it could strengthen the power of the lords, but the disadvantage was that it needed a large number of talented people to assist them. If the government was smooth, the people would be harmonious. If the government was not smooth, it would easily cause chaos. The second was the enfeoffment system, which was also popular among the lords. In his previous life, the enfeoffment system had its roots in soil. The first was the various major powers represented by the 6 tyrants of Handan. They were powerful, but their internal demands for power were also complicated. In order to balance out these demands, enfeoffment was a choice that both sides could accept. The reason why it wasn't obvious now was that a county was too small, and there was no point in enfeoffing it. Therefore, there was a general tacit understanding among the major powers. Before the county capital, they were united against outsiders. After the county capital, they would then divide the cake. The further they went, the bigger the territory and the more cities there would be, and the more people would stand up to divide the cake. In the end, through enfeoffment, Using the bloodline of the family as a link, they would form an unusually large group. That was not all. In fact, the major forces were also secretly making a big move. In the Battle of Chongping, how did the Yin-Huang alliance manage to rope in so many lords to stand on their side? Relationships, connections, etc. were all just on the surface. More importantly, some of the lords were backed by people from the major powers' families. They usually didn't show themselves. Take Dichin's Handan County as an example. When Handan Village was first established, the Emperor clan had already arranged for their clansmen to obtain the village creation token through the village creation mission and then conveniently build their territory around Handan Village. Once Handan County was bordered by these territories, they would immediately change their allegiance and become part of Handan County's system under the guise of being conferred. In this way, with so many spies in Handan County, it didn't take much effort to integrate the surrounding territories. Some innocent lords even wanted to form an alliance with the surrounding territories to resist Handan County. Who would have thought that within their alliance, there were members of the Emperor clan hidden? To these lords, it was such a tragedy. They had already fallen into the enemy's trap, and yet they didn't know it. Only a powerful force could afford to spend such a large sum of money on something like this. Commoners didn't even dare to think about it. Hence, Ouyang Shua's previous speculations were not without purpose. There was another group that was very fond of the feudal system. They were the major alliances led by local tyrants that had quietly risen to power recently. In the early stages of the alliance, they were united against outsiders, and there weren't many conflicts. After clearing out the surrounding territories, the alliance would be the only one left in the region. There would be internal strife within the alliance, and they would be on guard against each other. Internal strife was undoubtedly the worst choice, as it would greatly weaken the alliance's strength. If they didn't handle it well, the local tyrant's position would be lost, and they might even be swallowed up by other powers. Then how would they solve the division of benefits within the alliance, and not let the alliance fall apart? The enfeoffment system was the best choice. The alliance leader was the emperor in name. The alliance members were the various feudal lords. The feudal lords were relatively independent, but they were united against outsiders. In terms of historical development, the county system was naturally better than the feudal system. However, when it came to the game, there was no clear difference, and it varied from person to person. Back to business. After the establishment of Cliff Village, the expeditionary army began to get busy again. The first thing was to move the temporary camp to Cliff Village. Although Ouyang Shua was Bing, Ur's guardian, and had the authority to manage the territory, he couldn't use his title on Bing to make Cliff Village break through the level limit. Fortunately, the game was relatively free, and people could break through levels and build all kinds of buildings. Therefore, except for the quarries, logging yards, salt works, farms, and ports that had already been built, the rest of the buildings would be planned according to the county city level. Ouyang Shua had also prepared all the architectural drawings. Ouyang Shua directly ordered that Cliff Village be renamed Cliff Mountain City. Sun Xiaoya was naturally in charge of the overall planning of Cliff Mountain City. During this time, Xiaoya hadn't been idle. She had taken her design team and followed the Imperial Guard Brigade to visit the surrounding area. The basic city plan had already taken shape. According to the plan, the first thing was to build the city wall. The dangerous environment of Cliff State determined that only by building a strong city wall could safety be guaranteed and the people's hearts be at ease. The city wall of Cliff Mountain City was planned to be divided into two parts, the inner city and the outer city. The inner city wall was 3 kilometers long, and the outer city wall was 10 kilometers long. The scale of the city wall was built according to the city wall of Shanghai City. Because of the limited manpower, they could only choose to build the inner city wall first. Fortunately, the second batch of immigrants was already on the way and would arrive in Cliff State in a few days. After the second batch of immigrants arrived, the construction of Cliff Mountain City would definitely increase to a new speed. Ouyang Shua didn't intend to intervene in the specific construction of the city. He left it to Bai Nanpu and Sun Xiaoya. After the construction of Cliff Mountain City was completed, The government personnel that were brought over began to quickly set up according to the unified structure of the territory and put them to work. Chapter 346. When Binger returned to Shanghai City, none of the four little ones followed her. Needless to say, Xiao Bai and Xiao Qing were going to stay in the Spirit Beast Pavilion and not come out. They were going to wait at the Spirit Beast Pavilion punctually every day. Heya had to protect Little White, so he didn't return. The strangest thing was Schwer. The little fellow could actually cultivate in the Spirit Beast Pavilion. Cher was a top-notch artificial intelligence. In the game, she only existed as an ornamental pet. He did not expect the Spirit Beast Pavilion that Gaia rewarded him with was so miraculous. Snow was the most intelligent of the four. According to the little fellow, as soon as she entered the Spirit Beast Pavilion, a mysterious voice echoed in her mind, imparting to her the Spirit Beast cultivation method. Ouyang Shuo fell silent. Snow was becoming more and more like a player. Needless to say, the cultivation method that the little guy practiced must be the same as the real secret manuals that the players practiced and could be brought into the real world. He never thought that Snow would have such a fortuitous encounter. Ouyang Shuo felt as if a lifetime had passed since he stepped out of the teleportation array. Compared to when he left, Shanghai City had not changed much. The destruction caused by the battle in Lian province had been gradually repaired, and the people in the city had also returned to their normal lives. The dense number of barricades and arrow towers in the outer city had long since been dismantled. In just a few days, there were almost no traces of war. Who would have thought that not long ago, this place was the focus of the world's attention and was suspected to be on the verge of falling? Only the thousands of tombstones erected in the cemetery in the western suburbs spoke of the cruelty and mercilessness of war. As the spring festival approached, the festive atmosphere diluted the sadness of the city. The central commercial street was crowded with people. There were all kinds of traditional New Year goods. Compared to a year ago, when Ouyang Shuo still needed to personally purchase the New Year goods from the market, the difference was like heaven and earth. The presence of the Chamber of Commerce not only brought with it investment and business opportunities, but it also brought all sorts of small goods from all over the world to satisfy the consumer needs of the citizens. Not only were the locals of Shanghai City present on the commercial street, but there were also merchants, scholars, and ordinary people from all over Lianzhou County. There were even herdsmen from the mountain barbarians and grassland tribes. Shanghai City gradually became the political, economic, and cultural center of Lian province. At the intersection of the Friendship River and the canyon, a large distribution center had been completed. Every day, there was an endless stream of merchant ships traveling to and from the distribution center. The original dock had been expanded again and again, and now it had become a small city. Thanks to the Friendship River and Qiushui River, the two rivers connected almost half of Lianzhou County. The connection between the East and West prefectures and Shanghai City was getting closer and closer. Under Wei Ran's governance, Shanghai City was thriving. Before Ouyang Shuo returned, he didn't give any advance notice, so naturally, no one came to welcome him. When he returned to the Marquis's mansion, he alarmed everyone. The huge Marquis's mansion immediately became noisy. There were too many matters in the territory waiting for Ouyang Shuo to decide. Relying on Mu Lanyue to pass the message was inconvenient in the end. Knowing that the Marquis had returned, all the military and political officials hurried over. Ouyang Shuo smiled bitterly and shook his head. He knew it would be like this. Seeing how Du Ruhui, Fan Zhongyan, and the others wished that they could stop him on the spot, Ouyang Shuo waved his hand and said, "We'll discuss everything after the new year." Hearing this, Du Ruhui and the others were immediately dumbfounded. Ouyang Shuo frowned when he saw the bitter expressions on the ministers' faces. He teased, "What? Ministers, you work so hard that you don't even care about your lives. Do you want your ministers to suffer with you? If that's the case, everyone will blame this Marquis in their hearts. At the end of the year, I have to rest for a few days." Du Ruhui and Fan Zhongyan looked at each other and smiled. All right. We'll do as the Marquis says. That's right. Ministers, you are all loyal ministers. You should also take care of your health. Du Ruhui's health had always been poor. Although Ouyang Shuo was joking, he also had the intention of reminding her. He heard that Du Ruhui had been a little crazy when she worked recently and couldn't sleep at night. Thank you for your concern, Marquis. Ouyang Shuo nodded and continued. At the end of the year, there should be some rewards. The two of you will take the lead in coming up with the year-end rewards for the military and the government, and report to the finance department to purchase them. Fan Zhongyan smiled faintly, but he remembered the same scene that happened on the eve of last year's New Year. At that time, the Marquis had to personally purchase their gifts. The reward were also set by the Marquis himself. Times had changed, and the Marquis was already handling such matters with ease. After sending away the two ministers, Ouyang Shuo finally had time to return to his study. As for family Hua, she was naturally received by Bing the Little Lord. When Bing returned, the Marquis mansion was naturally in a mess. When the people of the Marquis mansion thought of the little princess's naughtiness, they felt both a headache and joy. Fortunately, this time the four little ones didn't follow, so there were fewer twists and turns. Although Lang by Nanpu wasn't around, the secretary's office was still operating. On the desk, some important official letters were neatly arranged, waiting for Ouyang Shuo to read and deal with. Ouyang Shuo delayed the meeting until after the new year because it was nearing the end of the year and he needed to rest, but he also wanted to use these few days to familiarize himself with and sort out the affairs of the territory. In the afternoon, Ouyang Shuo visited great-grandfather Jiangshang and War Saint Sun Wu. Although these two powerhouses didn't participate in the territory's affairs, they couldn't be underestimated. Since Ouyang Shuo had returned, he naturally had to pay them a visit. Apart from that, Ouyang Shuo also hoped to receive some advice from them. Ouyang Shuo had his own considerations about the territory's next step, but before he officially implemented it, he hoped to hear Jiangshang and Sun Wu's opinions. As time passed, Jiangshang's feelings for Shanghai City gradually deepened. Although there was still a grudge in his heart, he still gave a friendly response to Ouyang Shuo's advice. Just a few words of advice had benefited Ouyang Shuo greatly. Looking at the young Marquis in front of him, Jiangshang sighed in his heart. This person was young, experienced, shrewd, and capable. What was rarer was that he had a far-sighted vision. In Jiangshang's opinion, some of Shanghai City's actions were a stroke of genius. Moreover, he was young and held a high position. Not only was he not arrogant, but he was also humbly asking for advice. How rare, how rare. Even King Wu didn't have such ability when he was young. The opening of the military lecture hall was imminent, and Sun Wu was busy revising the teaching materials. Towards Ouyang Shuo's visit, Sun Wu's goodwill was naturally obvious. Ouyang Shuo humbly asked for advice on the future military structure of the territory. Sun Wu was indeed worthy of being called the War Saint. He directly pointed out a few flaws in Ouyang Shuo's plan, making Ouyang Shuo feel that this trip was not in vain. The wisdom of the ancients couldn't be underestimated. Before leaving, the two of them even exchanged some opinions on the construction of the military lecture hall. Ouyang Shuo wanted the first batch of students to be selected from the active soldiers. Sun Wu nodded in agreement. He also knew the weakness of Shanghai City's army. Ouyang Shuo's decision could be said to be well-intentioned. After bidding farewell to Sun Wu, Ouyang Shuo walked around the city before returning to his residence. The population of Shanghai City had already exceeded the 300,000 mark. Not everyone in the city knew him, the Marquis. If it wasn't for the personal guards following behind him, they would probably think that he was an ordinary scholar. The next day, after Ouyang Shuo's morning exercise, he went to the Marquis's residence to deal with government affairs. Although he let his subordinates rest, he couldn't stay idle. The consultation yesterday had made Ouyang Shuo's thoughts even clearer. He also needed someone to sort out his thoughts. Ouyang Shuo instructed the secretary office not to let anyone disturb him unless there was something important. Ouyang Shuo sat alone in the room. On the other side, two special guests came to Shanghai City. The two of them seemed to have met each other by chance. One of them was an old man. He looked strong and healthy, and he was dressed as a traveling doctor. The other person was young, probably less than 30 years old. However, he was disabled and couldn't walk. The young man sat in a wooden wheelchair and was pushed by the old man. What was even more peculiar was that there was a long scar on the young man's face, starting from his left eyebrow. Those who were familiar with the law would know that this was a scar left behind by the branding. The two of them were stopped by the city guards at the city gate. "Who are you?" The old man cupped his hands and said with a smile, "Sir, I'm a traveling doctor. I heard that there are many precious herbs in the city, so I came to take a look." The guard nodded and pointed at the young man in the wheelchair. "Who is this?" There were thousands of people entering and leaving the city gates of Shanghai City every day, but the guards wouldn't check them one by one. It was because the young man was too special that the guard were alerted. As a member of the military, the guard immediately recognized that the scar on the young man's face was the mark of the branding. Generally speaking, those who had been branded were either slaves or people who had committed the most heinous crimes. Either way, it was enough to attract the guard's attention. As the guard checked, a group of commoners gathered at the city gate. Seeing the young man's appearance, there was a lot of discussion. Some were sympathetic, and naturally, some were mocking. The young man didn't care about everything around him, as if he was already used to being pointed at. The young man raised his head. His face was extremely handsome, and the scar on his face didn't affect his temperament. Instead, it added a different kind of charm to him. "Sir, please know that I'm here to seek refuge with my grandfather." "Grandfather? Who's your grandfather?" The young man waved at the guard, indicating for him to follow him. The guard didn't suspect anything when facing a disabled person and immediately came up to him. The young man whispered a name into the guard's ear. It's him? Is that true?" The guard exclaimed when he heard that. The young man's expression was calm as he said indifferently, "If you don't believe me, you can follow me to see my grandfather. It's my first time here, and I'm not familiar with the way. Fortunately, I'll have to trouble you to lead the way." Seeing the young man's confident expression, the guard became solemn and said respectfully, "Please." As he spoke, he actually ignored the commoners who were watching the show and directly led the two of them into the city. This unforeseen event naturally caused the commoners to be gossipy. They were all guessing who the young man's grandfather was, and he actually caused the guard's expression to change. One must know that this guard was an elite of the city guard division, and he was usually very arrogant. To be continued. Chapter 347. The young man in the wheelchair was none other than one of the representatives of the military school, Sun Bin, the descendant of the war sage Sun Wu. Which generation Sun Bin was Sun Wu's descendant was not available in the historical records. The two of them appeared in the wilderness at the same time. In order not to appear out of place, Gaia had specially arranged for them to be grandfather-grandson. When he heard that his grandfather, Sun Wu, had settled down in Shanghai City, Sun Bin did not visit him immediately. Instead, he traveled outside and only rushed to Shanghai City on New Year's Eve to pay his respects to his grandfather. The old man accompanying them was the divine Dr. Bien K from the spring and autumn and warring states periods. Bien K, calling himself a traveling doctor, was not without reason. He did not intend to stay in one city or one place. Throughout history, Bien K and his disciples had traveled more than 4,000 miles and traveled to various countries, adapting to the customs. Under the guidance of the city guards, Sun Bin successfully met his grandfather, Sun Wu. The grandfather and grandson had crossed time and space to meet. It must have made people sigh with emotion. Seeing that the young man was indeed Sun Wu's grand disciple, the guard did not dare to be negligent and quietly retreated. After leaving, the guards did not return to the city gates. Instead, they went to the Marquis Manor to report the news of Sun Bin's arrival to the Marquis Manor. When the steward got the news, he was about to report it to the Marquis, but he was stopped by the secretary at the door. "The Marquis has ordered that we are not to disturb him unless it's something important." The steward understood and reported the news to the clerk. As for how the clerk would deal with it, whether he would report it to the Marquis or not, It was none of his business, and he didn't need to take responsibility. After hearing this, the clerk waved his hand and signaled the steward to leave. He thought for a moment and decided to inform the Marquis after he came out of the study. After all, Sun Bin was definitely going to spend the new year in Shanghai City, so there was no need to rush. Otherwise, if the Marquis' train of thought was interrupted, he would be in deep trouble. The Marquis of Lian Province's manor had yet to establish a specialized organization responsible for gathering news and intelligence inside and outside the territory. Thus, they could only send messages to the Marquis's mansion through servants, guards, and other people. As for the military intelligence department, they were only in charge of investigating military intelligence and would never dare to overstep the rules. Sun Wu's residence. Sun Wu's residence was not located in the official residence district. Instead, it was built inside the army lecture hall. When the grandfather and grandson met, Sun Bin introduced Bien Ke to his grandfather. "Grandfather, this is Divine Dr. Bien Ke, whom I met on my way here. Thank you for taking care of me along the way." Hearing this, Sun Wu immediately bowed to Bien Ke. "Thank you, sir." How could Bien Ke dare to accept it? He dodged to the side and said, "This old man came here to travel, so how can I take care of you?" Sun Wu nodded and said with a smile, "Old mister, you must have gained something by coming to Shanghai City." "What do you mean?" Bien Ke's eyes lit up. "Old mister, have you heard of the library? I'm here because of your reputation. I heard that there are ancient and modern books in the building. I wonder if it's true?" "It's absolutely true. The medical works of all dynasties and generations are all available in the library." Bien Ke was overjoyed and said with a smile, "This trip was not in vain. Not only that, Shanghai City has an official medical center. Not only do they have ancient medical skills, but they also have medical skills brought by the mutants. Among them, there's a surgical skill that's so amazing that even I can't help but gasp in admiration." Bien Ke was delighted when he heard that. "I can't wait any longer." Sun Wu laughed heartily. He was able to understand this as he had been the same back then. With a wave of his hand, Sun Wu summoned a servant and ordered, "Bring this old mister to the library." "Yes, sir." Bien Ke understood and stood up to follow the servant. Firstly, he was indeed eager to learn and wanted to read the famous medical books in the repository building. Secondly, Bien Ke also understood that Sun Wu, grandfather and grandson, meeting each other must have something private to talk about. It was very inconvenient for him to be on the side. After sending Bien Ke away, the grandfather and grandson felt much more relaxed. Looking at Sun Bin's crippled legs, a trace of pity flashed in Sun Wu's eyes. Sun Bin was sharp and sharp. He smiled and said, "Grandfather, there's no need for this. Even if I'm crippled, I can still command an army and win a battle from 1,000 miles away." There was a sense of heroism and ambition in his words. Sun Wu nodded and said unwillingly, "Even the divine doctor, Bien Ke, can't do anything about this?" Sun Bin shook his head sadly. Seeing this, Sun Wu no longer brought up this heavy topic and said with a smile, "Grandson, I've read The Art of War that you wrote. I'm very pleased." "Grandfather, you praise me too much. Good is good. There's no need to be modest in front of grandfather." Sun Wu waved his hand and changed the topic. "However, grandson, you can't be proud of this. Grandfather has been reading the military books of the past and learned a lot. Although the military books that you and I wrote are strategic, there are still many limitations and inadequacies." "Grandfather, you're right." Sun Bin sat in his wheelchair and bowed with his hands clasped in front, saying, "Grandson has come this time to accompany grandfather and concentrate on learning the art of war." Sun Wu shook his head and pointed at Sun Bin with a smile. "You don't need to hide it in front of grandfather. Grandfather can feel that you still want to go to the battlefield. And it's only because of grandfather that you're doing this, right? Grandfather, you have a good eye." Sun Bin was a little embarrassed and said, "I don't dare to hide it from grandfather. Grandson does want to use what I've learned in the army so that I won't waste my life." Sun Wu nodded and said, "Grandfather chose to live in seclusion because he's old and doesn't want to suffer anymore. Even so, He was moved by Marquis Lianzhou's suggestion and came out to preside over the military lecture hall. "Grandson, you're still young, so you don't need to concentrate on learning like grandfather. A good man should gallop on the battlefield." Is Marquis Lianzhou really that powerful to be able to convince grandfather? Sun Bin was a little surprised. He had never met this lord before, but he was quite famous in the circle. He actually had a trace of anticipation and an indescribable excitement. Sun Wu nodded and recalled the Marquis's visit yesterday. He sighed and said, "Shanghai City has a solid foundation and is unparalleled in the world. Marquis Lianzhou is talented and bold, and he's also courteous to the wise. What's rarer is that he's able to fully delegate authority and trust his generals. Take the recently concluded Battle of Lianzhou Province as an example. I'll give full authority to the Supreme General by Qi." Sun Bin became even more excited when he heard that. In Sun Bin's Art of War, he had written that generals must be loyal to the monarch. The monarch shouldn't interfere with the general's military affairs, and the generals must have independent military command. Marquis Lianzhou's actions were exactly what Sun Bin believed in. Seeing Sun Bin's expression, Sun Wu had no choice but to remind him. He said, "Grandson, since you've made up your mind, I have to remind you. Not only are there peerless generals like Bai Qi in Shanghai City's army, but there are also Shi Wan Sui, Ilai, Luo Shixin, Muging, and other generals. All of them are excellent candidates. You must not be arrogant because of your talent. It's not easy to gain a foothold in the army." After hearing that, Sun Bin said with a solemn expression, "Don't worry, grandfather. I know what I'm doing." After talking about important matters, the grandfather and grandson began to chat. As for divine physician BNK, he only returned to his residence in the evening after being reminded by the servants. The countless medical classics in the library fascinated the divine physician and made him want to burn the midnight oil. Ouyang Shuo also stayed in the study for the whole day. Even his lunch was sent directly to the study by Zi Su, and he ate it in a hurry. When he walked out of the study, the clerk immediately came up to him. On this day, the clerk was not doing nothing. He had already investigated Sun Bin and Bien K's identities through the servants in Sun Wu's residence. Reporting to the Marquis, "Two guests came to our territory this morning. One is divine physician Bien K, and the other is the grandson of war sage Sun Wu, Sun Bin." The clerk was concise. Ouyang Shuo raised his eyebrows when he heard that. In fact, ever since Sun Wu settled in Shanghai City, Ouyang Shuo had been looking forward to Sun Bin's arrival. This wait went on for more than 2 months. It was really a long wait. Ouyang Shuo had admired Sun Bin for a long time. Although he did not have many famous battles, every one of them was enough to change the direction of history. Although he was not famous, he was a famous general who wrote books about him. In other words, Sun Bin had surpassed the category of a talented general and should be classified as a talented commander or a strategist, similar to Zhang Liang, Zhuge Liang, and Guijia. As for divine physician BNK, it was purely a pleasant surprise. Of course, it was normal for the library's reputation to attract people from the 100 clans. Those who came to Shanghai City might not necessarily stay there permanently. Ouyang Shuo said to the clerk, "Send someone to inform the War Sage Mansion that I will personally pay a visit to the 2 distinguished guests tomorrow morning." "Yes." Ouyang Shuo nodded and went to the back hall. The night passed uneventfully. Gaia Year 2, 20th of February, Shanghai City. Tonight was New Year's Eve. Shanghai City was decorated with lanterns and streamers. It was a festive atmosphere. Under the command of Zi Su, the servants of the Marquis's mansion began to get busy. Some were in charge of sweeping the courtyard, while others were in charge of hanging lanterns, New Year paintings, and peach blossom talismans. The kitchen was even busier. Early in the morning, the kitchen maids began to prepare for the New Year's Eve dinner. The Marquis had already said that there would be a banquet at the Marquis's mansion on New Year's Eve. The square in front of the Marquis's mansion was equally lively. A huge stage had risen from the ground. At night, the troupe of the opera house would appear on the stage to share the joy with the people. At that time, not only the important officials who attended the banquet, even the common people could come to watch the show. Ouyang Shuo went out with his 4 guards following from afar. He arrived at the military lecture hall that was about to be completed. Ouyang Shuo was not in the mood for sightseeing and went straight to Sun Wu's mansion. After receiving the news last night, the War Sage mansion was ready to receive him. Even Bien K had to put aside his desire for medical books and stay in the mansion to wait for Ouyang Shuo's visit. With Ouyang Shuo's current status, it would not be excessive to directly summon the two to the Marquis's mansion. Personally paying a visit was already giving the two extremely high treatment. Of course, Sun Wu's influence also played a role in this. Since ancient times, doctors did not have a high status. It was very normal for them to be summoned by those in power. As a modern person, Ouyang Shuo naturally would not be discriminated against. He treated both Sun Bin and Bien K equally. To be continued. Chapter 348. The meeting between Ouyang Shuo and Sun Bin was uneventful, and both the host and the guest were happy. Since Sun Bin had the intention to become an official, he naturally wouldn't put on an act. Ouyang Shuo was overjoyed when he heard this. Yesterday, he had combined Sun Wu's suggestion to sort out the structure of the army. Sun Bin's arrival was equivalent to closing the crucial part of the army structure. Since the timing wasn't right, the two didn't have a deep conversation. Ouyang Shuo told Sun Bin to come to the Marquis's mansion tomorrow afternoon. After receiving Sun Bin, Ouyang Shuo turned to look at Bien K and smiled. Since old Mr. has come to Shanghai City, this Marquis will do his best to host you. There's an empty residence in the official physician's bureau. I wonder if old Mr. can stay there? Bien K was a little hesitant. He naturally knew that the Marquis of Lianzhou was inviting him to join the Shanghai City's official physician's bureau. Seeing Bien K's expression, Ouyang Shuo smiled and continued. Old Mr. doesn't need to worry. The official physician's bureau doesn't restrict the freedom of doctors, so old Mr. can practice medicine freely. Not only that, but the bureau will also provide you with travel expenses and servants. The only request is for old Mr. to recruit a few apprentices to expand the ranks of doctors in the bureau. Ouyang Shuo knew that Bien K would be doubtful if he only talked about benefits without any requests. What he wanted was for Bien K to stay in Shanghai City. Then again, it would be even better if he could fulfill the conditions for doctors to stay here. Bien K was tempted and recalled Sun Wu's introduction yesterday. He finally made up his mind and said, "This old man can't refuse the Marquis's kindness." Great! Ouyang Shuo was overjoyed. Seeing Bien K, Ouyang Shuo thought of a person and said, "Old Mister, there's a person who has a hidden illness. We've tried all kinds of treatment methods, but to no avail. I wonder if old Mister can diagnose him? Oh, there's such a strange illness. This old man would like to take a look." Bien K's interest was piqued. For a famous doctor like him, treating complicated illnesses was both a challenge and a way to improve his medical skills. Seeing that Bien K couldn't wait, Ouyang Shuo bade farewell to Sun Wu and smiled. "Since that's the case, I'll bring Mr. there since there's still time." "Sure." Bien K entered the house with his medical box and left with Ouyang Shuo. The person Ouyang Shuo was referring to was his half-master, Master Bajiquan, Lin Yu. Song Jia's invitation to Lin Yu had been thwarted. Now that there was an opportunity, Ouyang Shuo naturally wanted to give it a try. There weren't just martial arts centers in Shanghai City, but there was. However, the most famous one was the martial arts club founded by Lin Yu. The current dojo had not only changed its name to 8 Extremities Dojo, but its location had also been moved several times. The 8 Extremities Boxing Dojo was located in the residential area of the inner city. It was a large courtyard that occupied a vast area. The number of disciples in the boxing dojo increased from less than 100 to more than 1,000. Lin and a disciple Lin Yang, Lin, and Yang, and most had of them, and had. After. Back then, the earliest batch of disciples had done quite well in the army. The Wu In, and Mu Yang Tian, Bai Wu, Liang Dong, Bai He, On, Yang Mu and Army, by Wu Yang Wu. Also, As time passed, the Baji lineage gradually became a force to be reckoned with in the army. Not to mention, Ouyang Shuo himself practiced the eight extremities fist and could be considered as half a disciple of Lin Yu. The other disciples of the Eight Extremes sect naturally felt honored. They were innately loyal to Ouyang Shuo. When Ouyang Shuo and the others arrived, the disciples were decorating the dojo. Seeing that the Marquis was here, the disciples were very excited and they all rushed over to greet him. Marquis, Marquis. Along the way, the voices of greetings rose and fell. Ouyang Shuo gestured with his hand, and under the guidance of a receptionist disciple, he arrived at the main hall. When Lin Yu received the letter, he hurried over. Ouyang Shuo told the others to leave. Lin Yu knew the Marquis had something important to tell him. Only the three of them were left in the main hall. Ouyang Shuo introduced Bien Ke to Lin Yu. This is Bien Quebec. He's here to see Brother Lin. Lin Yu's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. The hidden injuries in his body had become an unbearable pain in his heart. After a long period of seeking medical help, but to no avail, he once felt despair and then became dispirited. If it wasn't for the boxing dojo, Lin Yu didn't know how he could survive. For a martial artist, not being able to use his martial arts was worse than death. Lin Yu looked at Bien Ke, who was behind the Marquis. He had a complicated expression. He was hopeful, but he was worried that his hope would be dashed. Those who were not personally involved would not be able to understand such complicated emotions. Bien Ke's medical experience was so rich that he had diagnosed countless patients in his life. Lin Yu's mentality was normal in his eyes. Countless patients with incurable diseases were the same. Bien Ke smiled and asked Lin Yu to sit down. Benefactor Lin, please sit. Let me feel your pulse. Lin Yu sat down like an obedient child. He was no longer the stern and cold master in the eyes of the disciples. Ouyang Shuo didn't dare to disturb him. Bien Ke was the main character in the main hall. As a matter of fact, Bien Ke had started the diagnosis the moment he saw Lin Yu. Traditional Chinese medicine was particular about looking, listening, questioning, and feeling the pulse. Bien Ke could be considered the ancestor and master in this field. He was especially good at looking at people's faces. He could judge the progression and prognosis of diseases by looking at people's faces. The famous poem, Bien Ke Meets the Duke of Kai Huan, vividly displayed Bien Ke's ability to look at people's faces. After feeling Lin Yu's pulse, Bien Ke had a general idea. He asked Lin Yu a few more questions to diagnose the cause and pathology, so he could prescribe the right medicine. But strangely, Bien Ke didn't say anything after asking the questions. He looked troubled. Lin Yu's heart was in his throat when he saw this. It could be said that Bien Ke was his only hope. If even the godly doctor couldn't cure his illness, then he, Lin Yu, should really give up. After a long while, Bien Ke opened his eyes and said, Benefactor Lin's body is suffering from a strange cold poison. It should be caused by an inner force expert who invaded his body with a poisonous cold inner force and caused it to stagnate. This cold poison is extremely vicious. It will constantly corrode the internal organs of the patient, causing them to fail and die. Lin Yu's eyelids twitched when he heard this. It was obvious that he recalled something unpleasant. He raised his head and cupped his fist at Bien Ke, saying, Old Mister is truly worthy of being called a divine doctor. I won't hide it from you. The one who injured me in the past was indeed an internal energy expert who was good at cold martial arts. Bien Ke nodded and continued. If it wasn't for Benefactor Lin's profound internal energy that suppressed the cold poison with his own internal energy, he would have died long ago. Even so, the cold poison has been stuck in his body for a long time. Although it hasn't spread, it has already caused great harm to his body. If you don't treat him, forgive this old man for being blunt, but I'm afraid that Benefactor Lin won't be able to live past the Spring Festival next year. Ouyang Shuo's eyes narrowed when he heard this. Lin Yu didn't mind it and smiled bitterly. It seemed that he had already expected this. Bien Ke continued. This old man knows of a medicinal pill that can cure the cold poison in Benefactor Lin's body. Is that true? Lin Yu couldn't stay calm anymore. He stood up and asked with joy in his eyes. Even Ouyang Shuo was happy for Lin Yu. However, as an outsider, he was clear-headed. He felt that things weren't that simple. Otherwise, BNK wouldn't have been in such a difficult position. As expected, BNK nodded and shook his head. Benefactor Lin, don't be too happy too early. There's a medicinal pill called the rhinoceros poison neutralization pill that can cure the cold poison. Is there any difficulty? That's right. I know the recipe and refining method. The only difficulty is that the rhinoceros poison neutralization pill requires an extremely rare main ingredient. What main ingredient? Lin Yu regained his composure, and a glimmer of hope appeared in his heart. The most despairing thing wasn't the visible difficulty, but the inability to see the path ahead. This was the first time Lin Yu heard of a specific method to cure the cold poison in his body. How could he not be happy? He had already made up his mind that no matter what medicinal ingredient it was, he would find it no matter how difficult it was. Rhinoceros horn. The medicinal ingredient that BNK mentioned made everyone's jaws drop. Rhinoceros horn? Lin Yu wondered if he had heard wrongly. He asked in confusion, "Divine Doctor, rhinoceros horn isn't considered an expensive medicinal ingredient. You can buy it from a pharmacy in the capital?" BNK shook his head. It's not difficult to find an ordinary rhinoceros horn. What's difficult is that the cold poison in your body has been stagnant for too long. You can only find a spirit beast rhinoceros horn. Lin Yu's face turned pale. Spirit beasts were extremely rare, not to mention that he had to find a specific rhinoceros spirit beast. Ouyang Shuo was delighted when he heard BNK mention the rhinoceros horn. By the time BNK finished explaining his request for the rhinoceros horn, he was filled with emotions. Everything in the world had a cycle of karma. Didn't he have an iron armor beast's horn in his storage pouch? The iron armor beast was mutated from a rhinoceros, which was almost the same as BNK's request. Ouyang Shuo knew that it was time for him to speak when he saw Lin Yu's dejected face. Ouyang Shuo took out the iron armor beast's horn from his storage pouch and handed it to Bien Quebec, sir. This is a wild beast that mutated from a rhinoceros. It's called the iron armor beast's horn. Can it be used as a substitute? In an instant, the iron armor beast's horn became the focus of everyone present. Among the three, Lin Yu had the most complicated expression. There were joy, excitement, anxiety, and so on. Bien K, on the other hand, was calm. He took the rhinoceros horn and examined it carefully. He said with a smile, "This iron armor beast is more powerful than ordinary spirit beasts. This horn is suitable for refining the rhinoceros horn poison pill." Lin Yu was ecstatic when he heard that. His voice was trembling. He came to Ouyang Shuo and said excitedly, "I can't repay the Marquis's kindness." Then, he was about to kneel on the spot. Ouyang Shuo quickly stopped him and said, "Brother Lin, you don't have to do this. When you first came to the Shanghai village, I promised to cure your hidden illness. Now I fulfill my promise. There's no need to thank me." Lin Yu was filled with emotions when he heard that. He didn't expect that the Marquis would keep his promise in mind. Lin Yu's current emotions were really complicated. At this moment, no words could describe Lin Yu's gratitude. Such a great kindness could only be repaid with his life. Ouyang Shuo also breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that he had fulfilled his promise to Song Jia. Ouyang Shuo did not stay for long. He left Bien K behind and asked Lin Yu to entertain him while he returned to the Marquis's mansion. To be continued. Chapter 349. Ouyang Shuo returned to the house of Marquis to meet a special guest. It was Zhao Kuo, who was under house arrest in the house of Marquis. The place where Zhao Kuo was placed under house arrest was a side courtyard of the Marquis's mansion. It was deserted and deserted. When Ouyang Shuo entered, he saw Zhao Kuo drinking alone in the courtyard. His beard was unkempt, and he looked slovenly. After the crushing defeat in the Battle of Lian Province, Zhao Kuo had become dispirited and dispirited. He no longer had the heroic bearing and fighting spirit he once had. His lofty ambitions had completely fallen to the bottom of the valley. Upon seeing Ouyang Shuo, Zhao Kuo staggered over with a wine pot in his hand. His eyes were hazy from the alcohol, and his voice was hoarse as he said, "Marquis of Lian Province?" His words were filled with mockery and self-abandonment. Now, Zhao Kuo had nothing to lose. "That's me." Ouyang Shua did not mind. He sat down on a stone bench in the courtyard and looked at Zhao Kuo indifferently. You came here, what are you doing here? Are you trying to humiliate me? Or are you going to drag me out and behead me? Behead me. Behead me. Zhao Kuo stammered, venting the discontent and resentment in his heart. Zhao Kuo had long since become indifferent to life and death. In other words, he was living a life worse than death. Ouyang Shua shook his head and said, "I naturally won't stop Ma Fuzi from abandoning himself to despair. However, if Ma Fujian knew that his son was actually so decadent and incompetent, I wonder how he would feel." Ma Fujian was Zhao Kuo's father, Zhao Shi, a famous general during the Warring States period and the ancestor of the Ma clan. Ouyang Shua noticed that when Zhao Kuo heard the name Ma Fujian, his hand that was holding the wine pot unconsciously tightened. Obviously, his father, Zhao Shi, had a special place in Zhao Kuo's heart. After the Battle of Chongping, Zhao Shi also appeared in the wilderness, but he never went to Danyang County to look for Zhao Kuo. Obviously, Zhao Shi didn't approve of Zhao Kuo and didn't want to see his father. This was undoubtedly a source of pain in Zhao Kuo's heart, as he longed for his father's approval. With a pale face, Zhao Kuo said bitterly, "What can I do? It's just death. Of course Ma Fuzi can die." Ouyang Shua's tone was indifferent as he said, "However, there are thousands of ways to die. Ma Fuzi, which one do you want to choose, committing suicide to escape punishment or dying from drinking too much?" "You." Zhao Kuo's face turned red as he shouted, "A warrior prefers death to humiliation." Ouyang Shua shook his head and said, "You're wrong. It's not this marquis who's humiliating you. It's you, Ma Fuzi. Every single word and action you speak now is shaming your father's generation, and you're asking to be humiliated. Sometimes a serious illness needed strong medicine." Zhao Kuo's heart had already turned into ashes. Ouyang Shua could only use words to infuriate him, in exchange for igniting his fighting spirit. Otherwise, what was the use of a dispirited Zhao Kuo? Stunned, Zhao Kuo raised his wine pot and gulped down a mouthful of wine. The wine spilled out and soaked his clothes, but Zhao Kuo didn't care at all. He was really drowning his sorrows in wine. After a long time, Zhao Kuo raised his head, looked at Ouyang Shua, and said, "What can a defeated general do?" His words were filled with endless bitterness and loneliness. Ouyang Shua was speechless. Zhao Kuo was really unlucky. His first opponent was a peerless general like Bai Qi, and in the end, his reputation was completely ruined. Furthermore, because of the Battle of Chongping, he was forever engraved on the pillar of shame in history. Right now, there's a position that can help you make a comeback. Ouyang Shua threw out the bait. "Oh, he, Marquis of Lian Province, wants to recruit me?" Zhao Kuo's eyes were filled with disbelief. The general lost because he didn't find the right position. The general has a wealth of theoretical knowledge, and he's familiar with military books. He's good at planning and plotting behind the scenes instead of directly commanding an army. The Marquis of Lian Province has a military office that oversees the territory's military affairs. The military office has a department of war, which is responsible for planning and commanding operations. Ouyang Shua briefly explained the structure of the Marquis of Lian Province. Upon hearing this, Zhao Kuo's eyes lit up. He was still a little dissatisfied with Ouyang Shua's evaluation. He always felt that he could also command an army on the battlefield. Seeing Zhao Kuo's hesitation, Ouyang Shua dropped another bomb, saying, "The military office and the army don't belong to each other, but they work together and restrict each other." Ouyang Shua stopped there. Presumably, with Zhao Kuo's wisdom, he would be able to understand the meaning behind his words. When it came to Zhao Kuo's mortal enemy, it had to be Bai Qi. The relationship between the military office and General Bai Qi was that they cooperated, but they also competed against each other. Upon hearing this, Zhao Kuo's interest was piqued, and his eyes lit up. Seeing Ouyang Shua's silence, Zhao Kun knew that the Marquis of Lian Province was waiting for him to express his opinion. Zhao Kuo let out a long sigh, threw away the wine pot, and smashed it to pieces. He tidied his clothes and bowed to Ouyang Shu, saying, "The defeated general, Zhao Kuo, greets the Marquis." Ouyang Shu accepted the greeting and helped Zhao Kuo up. He said, "General, wash up and get ready for tonight's drill. If Ma Fujian knows that you've pulled yourself together, I'm sure he'll feel gratified." Zhao Kuo choked on his words. Ouyang Shu quietly left when he saw this. He asked Zissou to prepare new clothes for Zhao Kuo and also arranged for 2 maids to help him wash up. After leaving the courtyard where Zhao Kuo was imprisoned, Ouyang Shu checked Zhao Kuo's attributes through the Lord's panel. Name: Zhao Kuo, King level, Dynasty. Warring States Zhao, Identity. General of Shanghai City, Occupation. High rank General, Loyalty. 70 Commander. 75 Strength. 45 Intelligence. 75 Politics. 58 Specialties. Familiar with military books. Increases military planning efficiency by 25. Remarks: Zhao Kuo learned the art of war when he was young. He likes to talk about military affairs and thinks that no one can stop him. In fact, he can only read his father's books. Although his father's teachings are not good enough, he doesn't know how to combine them. Gaia didn't think highly of Zhao Kuo, but he was more than qualified to lead the military office as a commander of the War Department. With Zhao Kuo's help, Du Ruhui's burden would be reduced a little. After checking Zhao Kuo's attributes, Ouyang Shu remembered that he hadn't checked Sun Bin and Bian Kei's attributes yet. Name: Sun Bin, God level, Dynasty. Warring States, Qi. Identity: General of Shanghai City, Occupation. Special General, Loyalty. 80 Commander. 99 Strength. 50 Intelligence. 88 Politics. 55 Specialties. Annihilation in Battle. Increases troop morale by 40. Tianji's Horse Racing. Increases troop movement speed by 30. Besiege way to rescue Zhao. Increases troop defense by 20. Anticipating enemy changes. Increases troop lethality by 25. Martial Arts. Sun Bin's Fist Manual, Equipment. None Classic. Sun Bin's Art of War. Remarks: Sun Bin's Art of War grievances. Save Zhao Tsuanhan and turn him into a hero. Save Zhao Tsuanhan and the army will rise. Cut off the ugly and the Fu Chime mailing. Carve out the E-Cauldron and the King of Books and Vines. The Tao of Dragons and Leopards and the Law of Punishment. Sun Bin was indeed better than the commander, and his commander points were even higher than Bai Qi's. What surprised Ouyang Shu was that Sun Bin had actually created his own fist technique. It was no wonder that even though his legs were crippled, his strength was still 50. He was indeed an extraordinary person. After Bai Qi, the territory had another divine general. Name: Bian Kei, God level, Dynasty. Warring States title: First of the 5 great ancient physicians of China, Identity. Shanghai City resident, Occupation. God level physician, Loyalty. 70 Specialties. Careful calculation. Increases territory trade profits by 1. Classic. Difficult classics. Bian Kei's internal classics. Bian Kei's external classics. Remarks: Bian Kei spoke of medicine and was a master of prescriptions. He was astute, and the future generations followed the rules. Bian Kei could be said to be the originator of China's traditional medicine. He created the diagnosis method of look, smell, ask, and feel, which laid the foundation for clinical diagnosis and treatment. The 5 great ancient physicians of China were Bian Kei, medical saint Zhang Zhongjing, Hua Ta, Sun Simiao, and Li Shizhen. Among the 5, Zhang Zhongjing and Sun Simiao were conferred the title of medical saint. Sun Simiao was conferred the title of medical saint. Zhang Zhongjing was conferred the title of medical saint, and the other 3 were also God-level historical figures. The 5 of them were the representatives of the school of medicine within the 100 clans. Therefore, Bian Kei's residence in Shanghai City was not enough to meet the requirements of the school of medicine. At the very least, one of Zhang Zhongjing or Sun Simiao had to choose to settle in Shanghai City. After lunch, it was New Year's Eve. Important officials and generals from various places also arrived at Shanghai City. Among the civil officials were Skywind Manor's Magistrate Chui Shaoxi, Milan Manor's Magistrate Mu Lan Yue, Duanren Manor's Magistrate Zhou Haichun, and North Sea City's Castellan Gushoan. Of course, there was also the Magistrate of the Mountain and Sea Prefecture, Wei Ran. Other than attending the banquet, the magistrates also took advantage of this time to rush back to the Marquis Manor to report on their duties. This was especially true for Zhou Haichun, who had been appointed in a hurry and hadn't had a deep conversation with Ouyang Shua before taking office. Among the civil officials, other than the 4 prefectures and a city guard, there was another official who received an invitation from the Lianzhou Marquis residence. He was Yongye County Magistrate Shun Jue. This signal was thought-provoking. Those with a keen sense of smell had already guessed that Shun Jue would be given an important position after the new year. Among the generals, there was the 1st Division's Chief Shi Wan Sui, the 2nd Division's Commander Luo Shixin, the 3rd Division's Commander Eli, and the 4th Division's Commander Mu Gui. Dai Qin and Lin Yi were the other 2 people who were invited. Of course, Bai Qi, Du Hui, Sun Bin, Fan Lihua, and Zhao Ko were also invited. If Dai Qin's invitation was a sign, because when Du Hui persuaded Dai Qin to surrender, she had already made a promise that Dai Qin would be given an important position. Then Lin Yi's arrival would be similar to Shun Jue's arrival in the civil service. Obviously, Lin Yi would also be given an important position. All the generals gathered in Shanghai City not only for the banquet. Before the new year, the military office had reorganized 3 divisions from the prisoners of war according to Ouyang Shua's instructions. The Marquis had returned. Obviously, the 3 division commanders would be decided after the new year. Therefore, the military and political conference after the new year had not yet begun, but had gradually become the focus of attention of all parties. Shun Jie and Lin Yi, the 2 young men, were naturally the focus of attention. If Jiang Shang and Sun Wu, who were specially invited, as well as the 3 heads of the civil officials were added, the lineup for Shanghai City's New Year's Eve banquet could be said to be epic. To be continued. Chapter 350. Magnolia teleported to Shanghai City with a gift for Ouyang Shua. It was a purple gold accessory dropped by Lord Chunxin after his death. Name: Golden Qilin Seal, purple gold. Type: accessory characteristics: demon suppression and exorcism, untainted by all evil. Evaluation: this is a sealed Golden Emperor seal. It can only be unsealed by the soul of the Qilin protector. After it is completely unsealed, it can protect the fate of a country. It is a supreme treasure. Ouyang Shua's heart skipped a beat. He immediately thought of something: the Imperial Jade Seal. 5 years ago, Dichen's Handan City was the first to establish a nation. To establish a nation, besides the capital and the title of nobility, 2 other items were required: the Imperial Edict and the Imperial Jade Seal. Ouyang Shua did not expect Lord Chunxin to obtain such a treasure. The Golden Qilin Seal was enough to make Lord Chunxin's heart ache. If Lord Chunxin knew the true use of the seal, he would probably cry himself to sleep in the toilet. Unfortunately, the seal could only be unsealed by the soul of the Qilin. Qilins were ancient, auspicious beasts. To find a Qilin and have it willingly offer itself was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. The Golden Qilin Seal was a treasure that could protect the fate of a country. Even if it was sealed, it could not be kept in a storage bag. It could only be worn on one's body. Otherwise, Lord Chunxin would not have dropped it. Fortunately, the seal was not large. It was stored in a golden pouch that could be easily hung on one's waist. Gaia Year 2, 20th of February, New Year's Eve. Shanghai City was brightly lit. The city was filled with a festive and peaceful atmosphere. Firecrackers were set off and music was played. In the main hall of the Marquis's residence, Ouyang Shua held a banquet with his officials. On both sides of the main hall, famous people and fierce generals gathered. Accompanied by singing and dancing, Exquisite delicacies were placed on the table. Delicacies, wine and delicacies were everywhere. Even a year ago, Ouyang Shuo would not have dared to imagine such a grand occasion. The only regret was that Song Jia was not here. At this time, Song Jia had barged into a farm in the mountains. There, she would spend an unforgettable New Year's Eve. Not only Shanghai City, but the entire China region was immersed in the festive atmosphere of the New Year. This was the first time China region's players celebrated the New Year in the game. Whether it was the national channel or the forums, they were all bustling with activity. From time to time, fireworks could be seen in the silent wilderness, lighting up the night sky. Both adventurer players and overlord players were celebrating the Spring Festival in their own ways. The 9 royal cities were bustling with activity, almost occupied by players. Following the customs of the natives and spending the Spring Festival with their families in the historical city was indeed a different experience for the players. The thick atmosphere of the Lunar New Year in the game completely awakened the players' memories of the year. Some of the elderly were even filled with emotion, and some of them were even quietly wiping away tears. The taste of the Lunar New Year was truly precious. As for the children, they were even happier. Groups of people were holding small firecrackers or fireworks as they walked through the ancient streets and alleys, experiencing a new year that was completely different from the modern cities. Binger gobbled a few mouthfuls of rice and ran away like a monkey, disappearing without a trace. For the children, this was a real moment of joy. This was the first time that players in the China server were unable to watch the Spring Festival Gala on New Year's Eve. Therefore, after the New Year's Eve dinner, the players always felt uneasy, as if something was missing. In addition, they didn't have mobile phones and couldn't snatch red packets, so the young people felt even more uneasy. They felt uneasy all over. Fortunately, be it the various territories or the royal cities, they had set up stage after stage, allowing some opera fans to feast their eyes and forget about the regrets of the Spring Festival Gala. After the banquet ended, the people of the Lianzhou Marquis Mansion also moved to the square to watch the wonderful opera performance. The performing troupe not only included the pillars of the opera building, but also the troops sponsored by the various large chambers of commerce. Not only in the square of the Marquis Mansion, but in other streets, there were also opera troupes of various sizes. As the overlord, Ouyang Shuo naturally had to share the joy with the people. After the New Year's Eve dinner with their families, the players had nothing to do, so they went to the forums to chat. For a moment, they felt a little bored. At this time, the players especially hoped that Gaia would launch some Spring Festival activities. On New Year's Eve, Nian would naturally be a program. The only special event was Shanghai City. Because Nian was already the guardian beast of the territory, no Nian would come here. To ordinary players, Nian was too rare, so they could not enjoy themselves to the fullest. Some players went to the forums and made a ruckus, requesting Gaia to organize some Spring Festival activities that could be participated by all. In fact, Gaia had really prepared a huge surprise for the players of the China server. At 9 p.m. sharp, a system announcement sounded on time. System announcement. Gaia Year 2, 20th of February, 9 p.m. sharp. Nian will descend upon the wilderness. All overlords, please prepare in advance. The Nian Spring Festival activity had officially begun. This time, Ouyang Shuo was a complete bystander. Along with Ouyang Shuo, there was a large group of ordinary players. As they were unable to participate in the Nian event, they were making a ruckus on the forums. 10 minutes later, just as some players were bored to death, another system announcement sounded. System announcement. Gaia Year 2, 20th of February is the traditional Spring Festival Gala's Eve. In order to add to the festive atmosphere, in 10 minutes, the system will start the Spring Festival Red Packet Snatching event. Please look forward to it. The moment the announcement was made, the players became excited. Red Packet Snatching was a memorable phrase. Without much embellishment, it was enough to ignite the enthusiasm of the players for the Spring Festival. Along with the system announcement, the details of the red packet snatching event were also released. As Ouyang Shuo watched the opera performance, he logged into the forums. Magnolia, who was sitting beside him, had long been immersed in the forums. The young lady had no interest in opera. In fact, there was a similar activity in his previous life. Ouyang Shuo logged into the forums to confirm it. Actually, the so-called red packet snatching event was simple. First, the participating players had to voluntarily give a red packet to Gaia. There was no limit to the amount of red packets, but the minimum amount could not be less than 1 silver coin. There was no upper limit. Gaia would collect all the red envelopes and distribute the funds randomly to every participating player. There were more than 100 million players in the China server. Even if each of them gave 1 silver coin, it was still 1,000,000 gold coins. If one was lucky, they could win the jackpot. If one only gave 1 silver coin to Gaia, they might receive a red packet of 1,000 gold coins or even 10,000 gold coins. It was a true jackpot. Of course, if one was unlucky, they might only receive 1 copper coin. This kind of game was truly suitable for everyone to participate in. It also had a bit of a gambling nature, just like buying a lottery ticket in real life. Naturally, it was popular among all the players. Of course, some players might make small calculations and make up their minds to give Gaia 1 silver coin. Even if they were unlucky, they would not suffer any losses. Gaia was obviously very proud of this. There was another interesting setting in the rules. If a player gave a red packet to Gaia, the larger the amount, the higher the chance of receiving a lottery ticket from Gaia. In order to increase the enthusiasm of the players, there was a hard rule. As long as the red packet reached 100 gold coins, they would definitely receive a lottery ticket. If the red packet was large enough, there was even a chance of receiving several lottery tickets. Not only that, but the lottery tickets were also divided into levels. They were the same as the level of the equipment, ranging from bronze to purple gold. Of course, there was no god tier. Otherwise, it would destroy the balance of the game. Gaia also explained the function of the lottery ticket. Lucky draw tickets were naturally used for lucky draws. At 10 o'clock sharp, the players who obtained the lottery ticket could participate in the lottery roulette. The prizes prepared by Gaia numbered in the tens of thousands. There were equipment, techniques, skill books, special items, and so on. The items inside included ordinary black iron equipment, secret realm scrolls, emperor tier techniques, and other valuable items that were truly attractive. The value of some of the items was comparable to the ones auctioned in the second system auction. Gaia made it clear that the higher the grade of the lottery ticket, the higher the probability of drawing a valuable item. Of course, even the lowest ranked bronze lottery ticket had a chance of drawing a purple gold item. However, the probability was similar to the probability of winning the first prize in the lottery in real life. This interesting rule completely ignited the enthusiasm of the rich players. The game inside was too complicated. It was not something that could be solved with a small calculation. Gaia's setting was clearly very interesting. It took into account players of all levels. Those who were not rich could play small to win big. They might really win a gold coin. At the very least, they could treat it as buying a lottery ticket. Those who had some assets could gamble on their luck and try to obtain a high-level lottery ticket. For a time, the China server's players were all attracted by the red packet snatching event. From now on, players could send red packets to Gaia. Every player only had 1 chance. After the red packet was sent, the amount could not be changed and a second red packet could not be sent. There was only 1 chance. Gaia set the deadline for the red packet snatching event at 9:50 p.m. Big Brother Wooey, how much are you going to bet? Mulan Yue couldn't help but ask Ouyang Shuo after reading the details of the event. It wasn't just Mulan Yue. At this moment, all the players in the China server were probably discussing the same question. The Mountain and Sea Alliance's channel instantly became lively. Some of the players who had been lurking around for a long time also popped up, excitedly discussing how much they should bet. If they gave too much, what if they only got an ordinary equipment? Wouldn't that be a huge loss? If they gave too little, they wouldn't be willing to accept it. After all, the temptation of a purple gold ranked item was obvious for all to see. Which player didn't have some fantasy in their heart? There were many players who gritted their teeth and spent 100 gold coins for a lottery ticket. If he really got it, wouldn't he become rich overnight and reach the heavens in a single step? The players in the China server were suffering and happy at the same time. Not only that, Gaia also made a big move. Gaia specially opened a broadcasting channel. As long as the amount bet was more than 500 gold coins, the name would appear on the channel. This was what the players called appearing on TV. In this way, it made the hearts of the richer people itch unbearably. For a time, the information in the channel was refreshed crazily. A large number of names appeared on TV. To be continued. Chapter 351. P.S. I'm really sorry. It's late. There's one more chapter tonight. Sorry. How popular was Gaia's red packet snatching event? Perhaps it could be seen from two small details. One was Binger. The little girl was playing outside, but when she heard the news, she eagerly ran over to Ouyang Shaw, spread out her white and tender little hands, and said in a clear voice, "Big brother, Binger's New Year's money. Baby, we want red packet money for." Ouyang Shaw was puzzled. In Shanghai City, if the little girl wanted to buy something, she could just take it. Zissou would follow behind and pay the bill. Therefore, Binger usually did not need gold coins to snatch red packets. Binger said confidently. Ouyang Shaw was floored. This event was really suitable for both young and old. Ouyang Shaw had no choice but to give Binger 100 gold coins. Binger was still young. Ouyang Shaw did not want the little girl to come into contact with too much money. Without another word, Binger gave all the gold coins she had just received to Big Sister Gaia. As for Ouyang Shaw himself, after some consideration, he bet 500 gold coins. He did not have extravagant hopes of winning the big prize. He just wanted to participate. With his pitiful luck, the probability of winning the big prize was slim. Mulanyu was more generous than Ouyang Shaw. She directly bet 2,000 gold coins. At the end of last month, the little girl received the first tribute from Mulan Manor. Her wallet was bulging. Another detail was the temporary broadcast channel that Gaia had set up. The channel had only been open for less than 10 minutes. Because there were too many people betting more than 500 gold coins, when the players appeared on the TV, it was just a flash. They could not see clearly at all. Because of this, Gaia had no choice but to raise the bet to 1,000 gold coins. It was also the only time that Gaia could change the rules at the last minute. The power of the players in the China server was evident. At 9:50 sharp, the system announcement sounded on time. System announcement. The Spring Festival Red Packet Sending Channel is officially closed. A total of 87503,472 red packets have been received. The total amount is 158,236,550 gold coins and 72 silver coins. All the gold coins obtained will be randomly returned to the participating players through red packets. At the same time, there will be a random lucky draw ticket. Please take note. As soon as the announcement came out, the players' first reaction was to check their system mailbox. Ouyang Shaw clicked his tongue. According to the data released by Gaia, nearly 90% of the players in the China server had participated in the red packet snatching event. On average, each player had bet about 2 gold coins. With such a huge amount of money, it was possible that 1 or 2 grand prize winners would emerge. Right when Ouyang Shaw was sighing with emotion, the sound of the system notification rang out by his ears. System notification. Congratulations to player who says naked. You have received a red packet from Gaia and an iron level lottery ticket. Thank you for your participation. We wish you a happy new year. Ouyang Shaw smiled bitterly. He had bet a total of 500 gold coins, only to obtain a dark iron lottery ticket. His luck was truly terrible. He no longer had any expectations for the amount of money in the red envelope. With a sigh, Ouyang Shaw opened the red envelope and saw a single copper coin lying quietly in it. The model copper coin gave Ouyang Shaw a heavy blow. Blinding, truly blinding. There's nothing more hateful than this. In an instant, Ouyang Shua's forehead was filled with black lines. Oh my god. Even if his luck was bad, it shouldn't be this bad, right? Gaia. God, you can't bully me like that. You are blatantly smacking me in the face. Can't we be good friends? Ouyang Shua covered his face and was too deep for tears. He felt as though 10,000 alpacas were galloping through his heart. With a pained heart, Ouyang Shua prepared to put the red packet into his storage bag. He did not wish for others to see the red packet. He could not afford to lose face. Unfortunately, things did not go as he wished. That lass, Mulan Yue, was sitting beside Ouyang Shua. The lass had just finished opening her red packet, and she looked delighted. Clearly, she had gained something. She turned her head and saw Ouyang Shua about to put the red packet into his storage bag. She asked in a crisp voice, "Brother Wui, how much money did God Gaia give you in your red packet?" 5,000 gold coin, 5,000 gold coin, 5,000 gold coin. Ouyang Shua really wanted to slam his head into a wall. How could the difference between two people be so great? Ahem. Ouyang Shua pretended to be calm as he said with a forced smile, "Congratulations. Yeah, I wasn't as lucky. I only received a pitiful 100 gold coins." When it came to lying, Ouyang Shua's expression did not change. Actually, 100 gold coins is not bad. As long as it's not a copper coin, it's fine. I don't know which unlucky person will get a copper coin. Just thinking about it makes me laugh. Ahem. Ouyang Shua's expression was already somewhat stiff. That's right. Unlucky person. Unlucky person. Yeah, the unlucky person you were talking about is sitting next to you right now. Ouyang Shua felt that he had already suffered 100,000 points of damage. Speaking of which, why was this spring festival so vexing? Can't we just have fun? Ouyang Shua was already full of resentment towards this red packet snatching event. Mulan Yue did not know that her brother Wui was currently suffering from serious internal injuries. She happily waved the lottery ticket in her hand and continued to add insult to injury. She said with a smile, "Also, Brother Wui, I also got 2 silver-level lottery tickets and 1 dark-level lottery ticket. What about you?" Ouyang Shua already had no strength to complain. He waved the lottery ticket in his hand and said weakly, "Here, there's only 1 useless black iron lottery ticket." Mulan Yue was also dumbfounded by Ouyang Shua's luck. The little girl did not know how to comfort him. She forced a smile and said, "Brother, don't be discouraged. Who knows, you might even get a dark gold item from the black iron lottery ticket." Even the little girl herself did not believe what she said. Yes, it's nothing. The most important thing is to participate. Ouyang Shua had already adjusted his state of mind. Through this event, he once again had a deeper understanding of his source of fortune. At this moment, Ouyang Shua heard a series of system announcements. System announcement. Congratulations to player Tong Yin for receiving another 10,000 gold coin gift bag. Congratulations to player. System announcement. Congratulations to player 3 Wave for receiving a 10,000 gold coin gift bag. Congratulations to player. System announcement. Congratulations to player Wings of Hurricane for receiving a 20,000 gold coin gift bag. Congratulations to player. Gaia sent a system announcement to all players who received more than 10,000 gold coins. These lucky people really gained both fame and fortune. Wow, they're amazing. Naturally, Mulan Yue also received a system announcement and exclaimed. At this moment, another system announcement resounded in the China server. System announcement. Congratulations to player Ouyang Bing for receiving the special prize of tonight's red envelope snatching event. She has received a 200,000 gold coin gift bag. Congratulations to player. As soon as the announcement came out, the China server was silent. After the silence, there was a hubbub. The national channel was completely boiling. Oh my god, who is Ouyang Bing? The birth of a super lucky star. Sob, why can't it be me? 200,000 gold coins. Oh my god, the #1 tycoon in the China server is born. Getting rich overnight. No more legends. Ouyang Bing, tycoon, I want to be friends with you. Those who knew Ouyang Bing's identity were also dumbfounded. Ouyang Shua's first reaction was, could it be someone with the same name? But on second thought, no, the game did not allow people with the same name. Bing, Er's heaven-defying source of fortune really made people despair. At this moment, Ouyang Shua was happy and depressed. They were both siblings, but why was the difference between them so big? The little girl was enjoying the treatment of a super main character. It was really hard to calm down. The establishment of the territory in Cliff State had already amazed Ouyang Shua. He did not expect that there would be such a surprise now. As long as there was a suitable opportunity, Bing Er's future potential was simply unlimited. Other than Ouyang Shua, only his aunt, Song Jia, son Xiaoya, and a few others knew Bing Er's ID. Even Bai Hua and the others did not know. They only knew that Ouyang Shua's sister was called Bing Er. Of course, Mulan Yue also knew. At this moment, the little girl was already so shocked that she could not speak. Shua, you gave money to let Bing participate in the bet. Such a heavy bomb. Even his aunt could not help but ask Ouyang Shua directly in the Alliance channel. Yes. In an instant, the Alliance channel blew up. Everyone was smart. They immediately guessed that this special prize winner was Ouyang Shua's sister. Ouyang Shua did not care about the messy discussion in the Alliance channel. What he needed to do now was to find Bing Er as soon as possible. When he thought of the 200,000 gold coins in the little girl's hand, he trembled in fear. After Bing Er received the New Year's money and placed the bet, she disappeared without a trace. Just as Ouyang Shua was about to look for her, the little girl ran back. Brother, look what Sister Gaia gave me. Ouyang Shua looked over and saw Bing, holding 2 paper tickets in her hand. The little girl ran over and handed the 2 paper tickets to Ouyang Shua as if she was presenting a treasure. Brother, here you go. Ouyang Shua took a look at them. One of them was naturally the 200,000 gold banknote, while the other was a violet gold lottery ticket. Ouyang Shua was already numb to the lottery tickets. Since the little girl could win the special prize, it was really normal for her to get a purple gold lottery ticket. He did not know what kind of surprise the little girl would bring to the lottery later. Mulan Yue also came over and looked at the 2 paper tickets in Ouyang Shua's hand, drooling. Compared to Bing Er's treatment, the little girl felt that the reward she just received was already overshadowed. Bing Er, do you know that you won the special prize? Mulan Yue carried Bing Er and pinched her little face, saying, Lucky little girl. Bing Er giggled. I know Sister Gaia told me. To be continued. Chapter 352. Sister Gaia. Ouyang Shua finally reacted. He could tell that Bing Er's words were unusual. Yes. Bing Er looked confused. She didn't know what was so strange about it. Baby, you've talked to Gaia, cough, Sister Gaia? Ouyang Shua chose his words carefully. Bing Er rolled her eyes. She was no longer a child who knew nothing. She sneakily pulled Ouyang Shua to her side, lowered her voice, and whispered, Big brother, big sister Gaia often talks to Bing Er, but she said that I can't tell anyone. Bing Er can only tell you. Ouyang Shua was silent. He patted Bing Er's head and said with a smile, You did the right thing. As the mastermind of Skynet, Gaia's intelligence was higher than that of ordinary people. The Federation had long regarded Gaia as an intelligent creature, not a cold machine. Ouyang Shua didn't know why Gaia would choose Bing. He only knew that it was better for him to pretend that he didn't know anything about this. Baby, I'll pretend that I don't know anything about this. You also don't need to tell me anything about your sister Gaia. Got it? Ouyang Shua said. Okay. Also, I'll take care of this gold note for you. Ouyang Shua waved the 200,000 gold note. He was worried about the lack of construction funds in Cliff State. Now it was solved in one go. In the entire world, there was no one who could be as relaxed as Bing Er was in being a leader. While the siblings were talking, it was already 10 o'clock at night. The most exciting moment of the New Year's Eve activity, the lottery will had finally arrived. Baby, you go first. Ouyang Shua returned Bing Er's purple gold lottery ticket to her. Okay. Bing Er was also very interested in the lottery. The players who got the lottery ticket would automatically see a virtual roulette in front of them. Because there were too many prizes, Gaia had already done a round of screening in advance. Everyone only had 12 slots on the roulette. The probability of a player winning the lottery was actually 1 in 12. Of course, the prizes listed on the roulette wheel were different for different people. Other than the players themselves, no one could see the roulette. Brother, Sister Guya said that Bing can choose one of the 12 prizes. Before Bing could even draw, she secretly revealed this to Ouyang Shua. Guya treated Bing too well. Not only were the 12 prizes of different levels, but they were also of different values. Moreover, for the players, some of the prizes were suitable and some were not. Naturally, they hoped to get a suitable prize. Bing on the other hand, could choose whatever she wanted. Brother, what do you think Bing should choose? Obviously, Bing did not have a clear concept of the prizes. Ouyang Shua's heart stirred, and he said, Darling, choose whichever item you like according to your heart. There's no need to consider anything else. This was Bing fortuitous encounter, and Ouyang Shua would not interfere. All right. Soon, Bing finished drawing, and a book appeared in her hands. Ouyang Shua took a look and was shocked in his heart. It was actually a secret manual. Name, Pure Heart Sutra Grade : Level 118th Attributes. Every increase in level, root bone +4, perception +2, all acquired attributes +2 characteristics. Unique item, cannot be dropped, cannot be traded. Remarks, pure body and mind, pure white and without dirt. This sutra needs to be practiced from a young age, without any thoughts, without any filth, without any thoughts, in order to purify the body and cultivate a pure and untainted body. Remarks, this is a special sutra and can only be practiced by a virgin with a pure heart. Ouyang Shua was silent. The Pure Heart Sutra was practically a secret sutra tailored for Bing. Although he could not see the grade of the Pure Heart Sutra, its attributes were even stronger than the inner canon of the Yellow Emperor that Ouyang Shua was practicing. Probably only when Ouyang Shua combined the 3 sutras into one could it surpass the Pure Heart Sutra. Before this, Ouyang Shua was still thinking about what kind of secret sutra he should prepare for Bing. Now, all his problems were easily solved. Ouyang Shua returned the Pure Heart Sutra to Bing and said, Darling, use this sutra by yourself at night before you go to bed. Understand? Since Gaia had made such arrangements, he would naturally guide Bing's cultivation. Ouyang Shua did not need to worry. Thinking of this, Ouyang Shua took off the cooling pearl that he always carried on his body and hung it around Bing's neck. Big brother, what is this? It's icy cold. Ouyang Shua smiled and said, Big brother's New Year gift for you. Do you like it? I like it. The little girl smiled sweetly, her eyes narrowing into slits. Bing was happy not because of the cooling pearl, but because her big brother still remembered the tradition of the past New Year and prepared a New Year gift for her in the game. And this was what made the little girl the happiest. Clever girl. Ouyang Shua pinched the little girl's nose. Of course, he could feel the little girl's mood. A warm current flowed through the hearts of the brother and sister. All right, darling, what other prizes were on the wheel when you drew the lottery? In the end, Ouyang Shua could not suppress the curiosity in his heart. What kind of items could be placed on the same level as the Spotless Heart Sutra? Bing scratched her head and said with a frown, Yes, there was the Nine Yang Sutra, the Body Metamorphosed Scripture, the Sunflower Treasured Book. The names are so ugly. There was also a village creation token, a treasured sword, a treasured pearl. Oh, there's also a beautiful treasured armor. As for the rest, Bing can't remember. Baby, do you know that every prize you've mentioned is enough to make other players go crazy? You even think that the names are ugly. If word got out, who knows how many players would be so jealous that they would vomit blood. Ouyang Shua could only silently think about these words in his heart. It seemed that Bing drawing the Spotless Heart Sutra was no accident. Gaia also gave face to the players who drew the big prizes and made a system announcement. System announcement. Congratulations, player. There was a carriage on Mount Akina. You have drawn a dark gold treasured sword, maple leaf sword. Congratulations, player. System announcement. Congratulations, player. Sad heart maple face. You have drawn the King Tier Skill Trinity Sword Technique. Congratulations, player. The strange thing was that Binger drew the Spotless Heart Sutra without a sound. Ouyang Shua knew that this was Gaia's way of protecting Binger. Otherwise, it would be too shocking. At this time, Mulan Yue had also finished drawing. Big Brother Wui, what do you think this is? A treasured sword suddenly appeared in Mulan Yue's hand. The little girl said proudly, "This is a dark gold treasured sword. It's called the Frost Moon Sword. You don't need it." Ouyang Shua deliberately mocked her. It was fine if she couldn't compare to Binger, but Yu still wanted to make things difficult for him. Hee hee. Mulan Yue didn't care at all. If I don't need it, I can give to Fei Xue. Mulan Yue was a girl who valued friendship. She treated Li Fei Xue, who had always been protecting her, like a sister. She gave away such a precious weapon, just like that. Big Brother Wui, you haven't drawn the lottery yet. Hurry up, I want to see. Ouyang Shua was speechless. The little girl was purposely angering him. He didn't care and really started drawing the lottery. As for the prize, Ouyang Shua had no expectations at all. He didn't even bother to look at what was on the wheel. He directly pressed the start button. The needle on the wheel began to spin at high speed and soon stopped. Ouyang Shua couldn't help but be speechless when he saw it. Guess what? The place where the needle stopped was actually another rusty copper coin. Could it be that Gaia was determined to scam him to the end? This was too much. Ouyang Shua was about to fly into a rage. Even if she didn't have any expectations, she couldn't keep giving him copper coins and rusty copper coins at that. Even if he was a beggar, it would be better than this, right? Ouyang Shua really wanted to die. Big sister Gaia, they were both siblings. Was it really good to treat them differently? It would be a blow to his young heart, all right? Gaia curled her lips. How is your heart, young? You are clearly as hard as a rock and have a heart of stone. Seeing the copper coin in Ouyang Shua's hand, Mulan Yue couldn't help but laugh wildly. Haha, Big Brother Wui, what is this? A copper coin. Haha, she laughed until she held her stomach. Ouch, haha, I can't take it anymore. My stomach hurts from laughing. Ouyang Shua was speechless. You, big miss, I say, let's pay attention to our image, okay? It's really funny. Mulan Yue tried hard to hold back, but in the end, she couldn't help but complain. Big Brother Wui, what is your fortune attribute? Why are you so unlucky? 5. Mulan Yue had a look of sympathy. She muttered, no wonder, with such a low fortune attribute, walking at the foot of the mountain, won't you be hit by the rocks? Mulan Yue's imagination went wild. Cough, cough. Ouyang Shua was completely choked by Mulan Yue's imagination. Big Brother, Binger also thinks that this copper coin is ugly. How about throwing it away? He didn't expect that Binger would also join in the fun. Hearing this, Ouyang Shua really wanted to throw away the copper coin in his hand. At the last moment, Ouyang Shua suddenly thought of checking the copper coin's attributes. Name, Yin Yang copper coin, Yang, type, special item, characteristics. After use, it can be resurrected without any damage. Remarks, Yin Yang copper coin, 1 Yin and 1 Yang. Yin and Yang is 1, can connect with ghosts and gods. After checking the attributes, Ouyang Shua grinned. This seemingly unassuming copper coin was actually extraordinary. To think that it would have the same effect as the substitute doll. Ouyang Shua immediately thought of the rusty copper coin in the red envelope. He took it out and saw that it was indeed another Yin copper coin. As soon as the two copper coins touched each other, they immediately merged into one. The rust on the surface also disappeared completely, suddenly becoming mysterious. The surface of the copper coin was painted with mysterious ghosts and gods, as if they were about to come to life. There was a saying, luck hides in bad luck. This saying was true. God Gaia still had some conscience. With the Yin Yang copper coin, Ouyang Shua could give the substitute doll to Binger and keep this copper coin for himself. He was not afraid that his strength would be reduced after reincarnation. Seeing the changes of the copper coin, Mulan Yue and Binger were so surprised that they couldn't close their mouths. Especially Binger. She had never seen such a magical scene before. She was as cute as could be. Mulan Yue was naturally more knowledgeable than Binger. She immediately guessed that the copper coin that Ouyang Shua had drawn was definitely not ordinary. He must have picked up a treasure. Brother Wooey, let me see. No way. Arrogant. Mulanue rolled her eyes and suddenly said, Brother Wooey, the other copper coin, could it be from the red envelope? Seeing Ouyang Shua's expression, Mulanue acted as if she had discovered a new continent. She said loudly, It must be. Wow, Brother Wooey actually lied. He even said that there was 100 gold coins in the red envelope. You big liar. Ouyang Shua looked embarrassed. Since the little girl had seen through him, he naturally wouldn't quibble anymore. So what? It turns out that this is not an ordinary copper coin. Mulanue was already speechless at Ouyang Shua's shamelessness. In the midst of laughter, New Year's Eve was coming to an end. To be continued. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.